Warrior Lore. Chapter 3965. Zichun, who was cultivating with his legs crossed, opened his eyes. His eyes were calm, and there were no other emotions in them. He heard the other party's hurried footsteps earlier, so Zichun wasn't surprised at all. He even kept the Death Soul Stone in advance. Zichun accepted the 2 Death Soul Stones given by Shanya. He didn't reject them as he wanted to speed up his growth. He looked at the sky. It wasn't time for work yet, but he didn't argue. He stood up and walked out. He knew the person standing at the door angrily. He was called Wei Hua. He had a bad temper usually and used words to bully Zichun before. Zichun took a glance at Wei Hua, then took his work uniform and went to work. Only Di Wu was there when he arrived. There was no one else other than him. Zichun nodded slightly at Di Wu, then walked to his workstation. Di Wu said indifferently, "Your mission today is to dissect 50 mutated beasts." "Got it." Zichun replied indifferently and picked up a mutated beast to dissect it. There was a figure moving around in the corner. Zichun glanced at that direction and realized it was the unwelcomed Butterball. Butterball had endless work every day, and it was very tiring. However, Zichun didn't expect him to come so early. Looking at Butterball's indifferent expression, it shouldn't have been a day or two ago. This made Zichun, who was feeling uncomfortable earlier, feel better. Compared to the most annoying and most tiring Butterball, his situation was much better. Butterball seemed to have noticed Zichun's gaze. He turned around and looked at Zichun, then gave him a gloating smile. Zichun glared at Butterball and turned around to work. Originally, no matter how hard he worked, he could only dissect 30 mutated beasts a day. Today, he increased it to 50. Not only did he have to wake up early, but he also had to return late. It seemed like trouble had come knocking on his door. Zichun started to decompose while Di Wu watched from afar like a competent supervisor. 2 hours later, everyone arrived. When they saw that Zichun had already dissected the beast meat, everyone was slightly startled. In the end, they smiled indifferently. This brat was too arrogant. Just because he knew the fairy, he didn't put anyone in his eyes. Usually, when they met, he would just nod and not even say a word. Now, he was being targeted. There was no doubt that everyone was rejoicing in his misfortune. Originally, there were some who wanted to build a good relationship with Zichun, but at this moment, they secretly gave up on this idea. At noon, Butterball came in with food. "Boss said that you have a lot of work to do. Don't rest at noon. Continue." Zichun picked up the food and sat down to eat. Without any energy to circulate in his body, Zichun, who had been busy all morning, was famished. Everyone else had gone to eat, so the entire operation room seemed empty. Butterball was also at the side, eating and laughing. "What are you laughing at?" Zichun asked. "Of course I'm laughing at you. You're worse off than me now," Butterball said. Zichun said indifferently, "Worse off than you? Are you sure? I'm only working overtime today." Butterball extended a finger and shook it. "No, no, no. You're starting to work overtime today. Not just today." Zichun's expression was still calm. "At most, it won't be more than half a month." Butterball laughed. "Seems like you still have some self-awareness, but you don't understand this place. If you're like this the first time, you'll be very miserable next time. Trust me, it'll be very, very miserable." Zichun glanced at the proud Butterball and said, "So what if it's miserable? Aren't you here too? You should have woken up earlier than me." "That's different. I can get off work anytime. I don't have a fixed workload. Unlike you." Then, little Butterball extended his head and asked mysteriously, "Are you really close to the fairy? How did you know each other?" "Not close. I don't know her." Listening to Zichun's perfunctory tone, Butterball said discontentedly, "Zichun, you should be happy now that I'm in front of you and can be your friend. Do you think there's anyone else in this place other than me who would talk to you? So, you should be grateful. Why don't you hurry up and answer my questions?" "I think you can get out of here." Zichun finished eating and continued to work. Today's workload was indeed not small. Butterball sat there alone, chuckling. He was not angry because he finally had a friend, and that was Zichun, who was also not liked by others. In this place, only he was willing to be Zichun's friend. Similarly, only this kind of Zichun could be his friend. Butterball's so-called friend was just a companion at work. He returned to his original position and continued to deal with the smelly internal organs. Zichun, the one who came last time, was the fairy Shanya. Do you know the fairy Lan Guming? Butterball's voice sounded in the distance. Of course, Zichun did not respond. The other party did not seem to want Zichun to respond and continued to speak. The fairy took the initiative to hold your hand last time. Did you feel very happy? Did you feel like fainting in an instant? The fairy took the initiative to hold your hand and did not avoid it at all. Do you know how many people's eyes were fixed at that time? How many people wanted to replace her? Listening to the other party's noisy words, Zichun said impatiently, "That's nothing. The fairy Shanya you speak of wanted to marry me, but I rejected her." Butterball clicked his tongue and said, "Kid, your big words are too funny. You should say it when there are more people. I believe everyone will laugh until their teeth fall out. Then you can pick up all your teeth on the ground." Seeing that Zichun did not respond, Butterball said again, "By the way, Zichun, do you think you are the brother of the fairy Shanya? Or a relative? Otherwise, why would the fairy not avoid you? It is said that there are many handsome men who want to strike up a conversation with the fairy inside, but they are all rejected. The fairy is cold to everyone, but in front of you, she actually shows a charming fairy smile." In the operation room, other than the sound of the analysis, there was only Butterball's words. Often, he would say 8 or 10 sentences, and Zichun would not respond. However, compared to being alone in the past, it was much better. At least he had a companion. That night, Zichun finished his work for the day. At the same time, Butterball also stood up and stretched. Diwu, who had been standing there until the end, said indifferently, "Today's performance is not bad. Continue tomorrow, the quantity will remain the same." When the fatty heard this, he chuckled and gloated. Zichun, on the other hand, did not take it to heart. After returning to his room, he felt tired. He took out the Death Soul Stone and started refining it. On the second day, Zichun woke up early and went to the operation room without being called. Butterball had already started his work. He was indeed working harder than everyone else. "Welcome, welcome." Seeing Zichun coming in, Butterball smiled. After Zichun came in, Diwu came in too. He stood there for almost an entire day. 3 days had passed. Zichun completed the analysis according to the rules every day. It seemed to be getting easier and easier. On the 4th day, Diwu said, "Increase the quantity today, 60. Chapter 3966. Looking at Zichun's reluctant look, Diwu sneered. "Why? You're not willing?" Butterball, who was far away, quickly winked at Zichun, as though telling him not to be rash. "Seems like you really don't care about everyone. Are you really that naive to think that you can do whatever you want here just because you know a fairy?" Diwu's gaze towards Zichun gradually turned cold. "From now on, you have to dissect 65 mutated beasts before you can rest." Finishing his words, Diwu turned and left. Butterball, who was far away, ran over. He looked at Zichun and said, "Zichun, you're too rash. In this place, Diwu is the god. No one can control him. Even Zhang Jinjing, who brought you here last time, didn't dare to make things difficult for Diwu. You could rest after dissecting 60 mutated beasts. Now, you have to dissect 5 more." Butterball patted Zichun's shoulder and gave him an expression that said, "Good luck to you. I can't help you even if I want to." However, after turning around, he started to gloat. Because according to the current situation, Zichun would have to wake up early again tomorrow. Perhaps the two of them could come together again. Zichun already expected to be targeted, but he didn't expect Diwu to have such a huge reaction when he frowned. Moreover, Zhang Jinjing didn't come again after a few days. It seemed like he had given up on that business. The sabers in Zichun's hands were special in this region. Every one of them was a soul weapon, and they were of extremely high grade. Zichun even guessed that their grade might be on par with the black rod that didn't advance. On this day, Butterball still talked a lot of nonsense. Those human souls who came at the usual time were still gloating. However, no one mocked Zichun intentionally anymore. It seemed like everyone was waiting for something. For example, the fairy's return? Diwu stood at the door again, supervising everyone's work. When it was mealtime, Butterball took the initiative to deliver food again. There were only 2 people in the huge operation room. The 2 of them squatted there and ate. Butterball, who couldn't stay still, once again asked about the fairy Shanya. Zichen couldn't be bothered to listen anymore. He interrupted the other party and asked, Butterball, why do you have to do so much work? Butterball chewed the meat and said vaguely, because I'm annoying. Zichen looked at Butterball with a strange expression. Butterball quickly swallowed the food in his mouth and said, I'm just kidding. Don't take it seriously. You think this is a very unpleasant job, right? Actually, that's not the case. Many people fought for it, but unfortunately, none of them had the ability. In the end, it was mine. Speaking of this matter, Butterball had a complacent look on his face. It was as if this job was a great honor, and he had fought for it all the way. Zichun said sincerely, Your acting skills are on par with Fong Wulian, but your skin is much thicker than his. Who's Fong Wulian? Butterball asked. A friend of mine. Zichun said. Butterball's eyes lit up and said, So you're saying that you treat me as a friend too? Pretend I didn't say anything. Zichun continued to eat with his head lowered. This damn Butterball is still not telling the truth. Why is everyone fighting for this stupid job? Are they all blind? After eating, Zichun continued to work. Butterball also ran to another corner to deal with the mutated beast's innards. No matter how one looked at it, it wasn't a job that many people would fight for. After dinner, everyone left. Zichun continued his unfinished work. Diwu watched for 2 hours before leaving. Butterball didn't leave either. When Zichun finished his work, Butterball stood up and the 2 of them left together. It was the same for the next 2 days. On the way back, Zichun looked at Butterball and said, Damn Butterball, tell me honestly, are you a spy sent by Diwu? If I don't complete the task, you'll expose me, right? Butterball looked wronged. I've been doing this job for so many years. Could it be that Diwu has the ability to predict the future and knew that Zichun would come? It's good that you're not. If I find out that you're a spy, I'll beat you up. Zichun raised his fist. Butterball's body trembled subconsciously and dodged. He seemed to have suffered a lot like this before. Look at your cowardly face. If someone beats you up in the future, raise your fist and beat them back. Zichun loosened his fist. But I can't beat them, and they have more people. Butterball said, feeling wronged. Zichun's eyes suddenly turned cold. If you can't beat everyone, then catch the one who bullied you and beat him to death. Butterball shrunk his neck and said, Fighting is not allowed here, not to mention a fight to the death. This is the rule. Get lost. Zichun waved his sleeve and gave Butterball a get lost as a reward. Then, he walked back to his room. After returning to his room, he continued to refine the Death Soul Stone. The energy contained in a piece of Death Soul Stone was completely out of Zichun's imagination. Just as Zichun was getting familiar with it, Diwu said again one morning, Break down 70 of them today. With another 5, the workload increased again. This time, Zichun didn't argue because he had experience. Even if his expression changed, Diwu would purposely increase the number. Moreover, Diwu would supervise him. Even when he wasn't around, Butterball would still be around. This made Zichun suspect that Butterball would expose him. 75, 80. The number was still increasing. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Zhang Jingjing didn't come, and no one else came to look for him. According to Zichun's estimation, this display of power seemed to be taking too long. In the blink of an eye, a few days had passed. Zichun could already break down 80 of them in a day. His speed was much faster than before. But on the second day, Diwu increased the number to 100 per day. This time, he didn't even give Zichun a chance to reject him. He turned and left. Zichun was left alone, and the sky had just begun to brighten. Butterball walked over from the side. This time, he didn't mock Zichun. Instead, he said with pity, You're in trouble, breaking down 100 per day. It has been many years since someone like you appeared. Zichun frowned and fell into deep thoughts. Did I estimate wrongly? After this display of power, he didn't tempt me with benefits. Is he waiting for me to give in and take the initiative? Just then, Butterball picked up Zichun's saber. Your method of breaking down seems to be wrong. Try this and see if you can break it down faster. Zichun dismissed the thought in his mind and looked at Butterball. He wouldn't give involuntarily. Different situations call for different actions. Butterball held the saber with his right hand. Veins appeared on the back of his hand as if he was accumulating strength. It's said that those outstanding general-level existences had a unique way of breaking down meat at an extremely fast speed. Although their current achievements have nothing to do with the way they broke down meat, it's still a beautiful story. Take the current top 10 as an example. Even the 10th person, Yao Yi, had a record of 150. Butterball turned to look at Zichun and said, "It's 150 at a normal time. You don't have to wake up early to work overtime and rest at noon. You can even leave early at night." Butterball shook his hand gently. A ray of light shone from the saber in his hand. The saber was placed horizontally on the meat that had its internal organs removed. With another shake of his hand, a skillful force was activated through the saber, and the entire rack of meat flew up. Butterball had a rare serious expression on his face. He was like a swordsman who had studied swordsmanship for many years. When he raised his saber, a cold ray flickered. Chapter 39:67. Shanya, long time no see. Did you go hunting again? How did it go? A young man in white stood on the road in front of the mountain. He held a folding fan in his hand and had a handsome face. He looked very confident and at ease. With her path blocked, Shanya stopped. She glanced at the other party and asked, "Who are you?" The smile on the young man's face did not diminish. "I'm Yao Yi, one of the 10 general talents." Shanya said lightly, "I've never heard of him and I don't know him. What about you? Have you heard of him?" Shanya looked back at Lan Guming, who was walking over. Lan Guming said, "I've heard of someone called Car Steward. He seems to be one of the 10 talents. By the way, what rank did you say you were?" 10th, Yao Yi. The smile on Yao Ye's face was a little forced. "I've never heard of him, and we're not familiar with him." "Don't block the way," Lan Guming said lightly. Yao Ye's face was a little distorted. He said indifferently, "My grandfather is Immortal Tianju." Lan Guming looked back at Yao Yi. "We know about Immortal Tianju, but we really don't know about you." After that, the two women left. It was extremely rare to be able to talk so much with Yao Yi. "You'll regret it." The humiliated Yao Ye's eyes were spitting fire. The knife was a boning knife. It was special. It was very sharp and shiny. The moment Butterball took out the knife, Zichun had a whole new level of respect for him. He did not expect that Butterball, who was hated by everyone, was actually a great swordsman. Was the work of handling the internal organs of exotic beasts all day long really a job that everyone competed for? Just when Zichun was doubting himself and looking at Butterball with a new level of respect, he saw the shining knife light was submerged by the meat. Then, the meat hit Butterball's head. Butterball screamed, "Save me!" Butterball, whose head was covered by the meat, began to scream. Zichun shook his head and dispelled all his previous misconceptions. He took the meat from Butterball's head. Butterball put down the boning knife and said awkwardly, "I'm just giving you a demonstration. I remember that Yao Yi did this before." After saying that, Butterball turned around and ran away. It was obvious that he had screwed up this time. Zichun stood in place and didn't mock Butterball. Although the result was a little comical, Butterball's previous actions had given Zichun a lot of inspiration. Perhaps he could change his train of thought or try a different method. In the distance, Butterball saw that Zichun didn't speak for a long time, so he plucked up his courage and said, "There used to be a driver who could decompose 200 animals a day. It's said that he even learned a new technique because of that." Zichun closed his eyes and recalled Butterball's previous actions in his mind. He seemed to have been inspired. Butterball stood in the distance and looked at Zichun, who was deep in thought. He muttered, "It can't be, right? He really learned something?" Butterball had obviously screwed up earlier, but he had given Zichun a lot of inspiration. At this moment, that scene replayed in Zichun's mind. However, it wasn't Butterball who had made the knife move. Instead, it was the speed and strength of the knife moving through the air, as well as the speed of the exotic beast's descent. After standing like that for a quarter of an hour, Zichun opened his eyes. During this time, Butterball had been staring at Zichun the whole time. When he saw him open his eyes, He instantly picked up the piece of meat from before with the knife. The meat flew up, and he made 3 slashes in the air. On the 4th time, he used the knife to carry the meat down and return to the table. The efficiency was very slow. If this continued, Zichun would definitely not be able to finish his work. However, Zichun didn't care. He tried again and again until someone was about to come. He continued to scrape the bones according to the normal method. At the same time, he was thinking about the problem of making the knife move earlier. When the people who came to work saw that Zichun hadn't even finished dissecting an exotic beast, they all had strange expressions on their faces. According to his usual routine, Zichun had already dissected a few exotic beasts by now. Diwu appeared at the door and saw the situation in front of Zichun as well. His expression didn't change much, and he only glanced at Butterball. At this moment, Butterball was focused on his work. At noon, the others left. Butterball brought food over. He looked at Zichun, who was deep in thought, and said, "You can't do this. You won't be able to finish your work today." Zichun took the food and started eating. He was still thinking about something in his mind. "Don't tell me he's possessed," Fatty muttered. After finishing his food at his fastest speed, Zichun continued to try out the newest dissecting method. He practiced over and over again, but he didn't even finish half of his dissecting task today. According to Zichun's current speed, he would probably have to work overtime until midnight. After Butterball finished his food, he walked to Zichun silently and helped him to dissect the exotic beasts. Zichun glanced at Butterball. Butterball said, "What are you looking at? I told you, I have a lot of freedom in my work. You, on the other hand, can forget about resting if you can't finish dissecting 100 beasts today." Butterball continued, "Don't underestimate the workload for a day. If you can't finish it today, you won't be able to rest well. It'll be worse the next day. In the end, your spirit will collapse." Zichun patted Butterball's shoulder and smiled. Then, he continued to experiment with the knife. Butterball stood at the side and helped Zichun to dissect the exotic beasts. Zichun's speed of dissecting the beasts increased significantly. He also gained a new understanding of the sharpness of the knife and the toughness of the meat. It could be said that Butterball had helped him open a door. As for what was behind this door, he had to explore it himself. However, this exploration process was extremely difficult. Even with Butterball's help, Zichun's return was delayed by a lot. Zichun was already exhausted when he returned to his room. However, he didn't dare relax in the slightest as he continued to refine the Death Soul Stone. Compared to the others, Zichun, who possessed the Death Soul Stone, was much luckier. His body, which had been suppressed by his power, was constantly absorbing the energy within the Death Soul Stone. Although there weren't any visible changes, the exhaustion he had felt when he had returned was completely swept away. Zichun opened his eyes when the sky started to brighten. His mental state had already recovered to its peak. He glanced at the Death Soul Stone in his hand. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt like he had used up a lot of energy the night before. After washing up, Zichun left his room and went to work while the sky was still slightly bright. Butterball hadn't arrived yet, so Zichun was obviously the first to arrive. He continued to try out the insights he had gained the day before. Every time he tried, he would make other adjustments after dissecting the knife so that his body, which didn't have much energy, could be accurate down to the smallest detail. After about an hour, Butterball arrived late. When he saw Zichun, he was a little shocked. However, he was even more surprised. He walked over and said, "Are you really going to try it? I was just joking with you yesterday." Zichun ignored him. He had been around for too long, so his control over his power was far beyond Butterball's imagination. He knew what he was doing. However, everything was difficult at the beginning. Once he mastered the technique, everything that followed would be twice the result with half the effort. After practicing for 2 hours, Zichun started to break it down. Butterball had an endless amount of work to do every day, so Zichun didn't want to take up his time. Chapter 3968. Diwu was the manager of this place. He was also Zichun's current boss. He was in charge of over 100 people. He had been the manager for many years and saw many human spirit realm experts advancing and joining the battlefield. Some died in battle, some advanced. But for some reason, Diwu himself didn't break through. And he didn't seem to be in a hurry. He was very relaxed every day and almost didn't cultivate. Diwu, who was sitting there drinking tea, took a glance at the person who came and said, "I'm not slow. That kid is too tough." "Willful? He dares to be willful in front of you?" Earth's spirit realm said unhappily. "It's toughness." Diwu said, "You know he came in through connections. How long has he been here? I've already arranged for him to dissect 100 a day. He's also working overtime. Back then, you could only dissect 100 until you left, right?" Earth's spirit realm said, "That's different. I'm different from him. I didn't work overtime. My speed is much faster than his. No, you have to continue forcing him and make him break down. Either he comes to you or ask for help from Fairy Shanya." Diwu took a glance at Earth's spirit realm and said, "Shingue, you're a warrior. Why do you have to do this?" Shingue said, "You'll understand when you get on the battlefield. Let me tell you the truth. Yao Yi is determined to get Fairy Shanya. You're just a small interlude. If you do it well, Yao Yi will naturally reward you. If you don't, you'll make Yao Yi unhappy. The most important thing is still Spiritual Master. I heard Spiritual Master already took the initiative to facilitate their relationship." Diwu said, "Spiritual Master won't interfere in this matter." "Then let's wait and see." Shungue laughed. "I've already passed the message. Do as you see fit." As he spoke, Shingue bowed down and said, "Diwu, when I first came here, you were just a manager who managed over 100 of us. After so many years, how many of us have become Earth Soul Realm experts and entered the battlefield to obtain merits? What about you? Why are you still a lousy manager? Don't you have other pursuits? Or should I say, is this the extent of your talent? Think about it. The chance to change your fate is right in front of you." Shungue left. Diwu looked at his back view and shook his head. When immortals fight, mortals suffer. The most important thing is that these little ghosts are extremely difficult to deal with. He left the room and walked towards the console room. Everyone else had left, leaving only Zichun and Butterball behind. Zichun was still trying out new decomposition methods over and over again, while Butterball was working on the other side. After watching for a while, Diwu left. That night, Zichun left very late. He was the first to arrive and the last to leave. The next day, they continued. 5 days later, one soul stone was completely consumed. On this day, Shanya came looking for Zichun again. Diwu said, "Go. Remember to finish your work." He did not embarrass Zichun. The two of them left together and went to Zichun's residence again. "How is it?" Shanya sat on Zichun's bed and swung her legs. Zichun said, "It's all right. How about you guys?" "We're fine too. We don't feel much pressure as long as we don't give them a good look. Although the seniors in Heavenly Soul Realm wanted to matchmake us, they didn't force us and only said to leave it to fate. Little Mute and I are worried about you. After all, the others don't think so." "Don't worry. I'm fine too." "Really?" "Of course." Looking at Zichun's relaxed expression, Shanya nodded and continued, "This is a Death Soul Stone." Zichun interrupted her. "I still have one with me. I don't need it now. You guys can refine it yourselves." After being here for so long, Zichun understood the Death Soul Stone. It was an extremely precious item. "Take it. You need it more than anything else right now." Shanya said, "After all, the two of us still need to rely on you. If you can't handle the pressure and push us out, where can we find a backer?" Shanya rolled her eyes and said, "Or, do you really want us to get married?" Zichun thought about it and said, "If there's really someone suitable, let's take a look first. We'll talk about it when we meet one." Zichun only left one Death Soul Stone behind. After bidding farewell to Shanya, he returned to the control room. Everyone still looked at him with strange gazes. Zichun was expressionless as he analyzed silently. Shingue knocked on the door and walked in at Yao Ye's residence. Fairy Shanya went to look for Zichun again. She only stayed for an hour this time. She was quite happy when she left. "I didn't see anything unusual." Shingue said. "What about now?" Yao Yi asked. "I heard he's cultivating." Shingue said. Yao Ye's eyes turned cold. "Seems like he's quite capable. Go look for Diwu now and tell him I'm very disappointed in this matter. Ask him to take care of himself." "Yes." Shingue went to look for Diwu and expressed Yao Ye's intention with a tough attitude. Diwu said helplessly, 100 beasts is already Zichun's limit. If it was someone else, they wouldn't be able to complete this mission. If there's more and something happens midway, not only will I be punished, you won't be able to run away by then. This is your answer? Shin Gui squinted his eyes. Di Wu, remember, you're only their leader, not mine. If I want to deal with you, I just need to move my fingers, right? If Yao Yi wants to deal with you, it's even easier. He just needs to move his mouth. Shin Gui said firmly, I don't care what method you use. You must make Zichun beg for mercy. As long as you accomplish this, you won't be short of benefits in the future. All right, I'll try. Di Wu could only respond. Shin Gui left. He had to look for Zichun in the control room again. Even if it was just for show, it was fine. Zichun was still dissecting the beast meat silently. He looked calm and didn't complain. After looking at it for an hour, he turned around and left, but didn't say anything. The second day, the third day, the fourth day. Time flew by. The calmer Shanya was, the greater the pressure on Di Wu's side. Di Wu visited Zichun a few times. He could feel Zichun's improvement, but he didn't break through the limit. He didn't understand. Why didn't anyone stop this from happening? Could there really be an enlightened master involved? On this day, Yao Yi came personally. He looked at Di Wu and said indifferently, Boss, you've disappointed me. Back when Yao Yi was still in the human soul realm, Di Wu was in charge. There's no choice. Everything has to be done according to the rules. This is Zichun. If it was someone else, their soul spirit would have collapsed and they would have died. Dissecting the beast meat seemed normal, but it consumed a lot of soul spirit. Zichun was definitely the first to achieve such an achievement in less than a month. Even Yao Yi didn't have this ability in the past. Of course, it was also thanks to the Death Soul Stone given by Shanya. If not, Zichun wouldn't have insisted on not going. Continue to increase. I'll take responsibility if anything happens. This time, I must make him lower his head in front of me. Yao Yi said, This is an order. You must obey it. Di Wu sighed and went to the control room to look for Zichun. When he came to the door, he saw Zichun standing there. He took a deep breath, exerted strength in his wrist, and lifted the beast body with his blade. The beast body flew high up. Zichun tapped his foot and flew up. In his hand, a blade light flashed. 1 blade, 2 blades, 3 blades. Chapter 3969. Horizontal slash, downward slash, saber light flashing. Every slash landed on a different part of the body, and the strength was different. Sometimes it was weak, sometimes it was strong. There was not much waste. Butterball stood up and widened his eyes in shock. How many years had it been since he last saw such a scene? He did not expect that he would really comprehend it. How long had it been? Butterball was very shocked. This was from the bottom of his heart. After coming here, he became the most disliked existence. He had seen too many geniuses. Some had already fallen, and some had become insignificant figures. For example, Yao Yi could decompose 150 beasts a day when he was still in the human soul realm. However, the method he used was not the same as Zichun's. Moreover, it took him several years to reach this step. However, how long did Zichun take? It was less than a month. Although his speed was not as fast as Yao Ye's, his comprehension was much better than Yao Ye's. In Butterball's opinion, even the caretaker might not have Zichun's comprehension. Zichun's body landed on the ground, and the beast's body followed suit. About 1/5 of it had been decomposed. His breathing gradually quickened. He had used a total of 38 slashes and had consumed a lot of energy. Out of the 38 slashes, only 1 slash had a good grasp of the strength. The other 37 slashes were either too light or too heavy. Zichun was reflecting. Zichun, you're good. Butterball came to Zichun's side and exclaimed excitedly. Can I? Zichun's forehead was already sweating. Although it was only 38 slashes, the energy consumed was completely beyond imagination. Of course, Butterball said excitedly. Just this move alone is enough to suppress all the heroes. Zichun laughed self-deprecatingly and said, Out of 38 slashes, only 1 passed. Do you think it's great? Butterball nodded again, very sure. Zichun was a little speechless, but he did not argue anymore. He continued to regulate his breath and prepared for the next slash. About 10 minutes later, Zichun slashed for the second time. This time, He learned his lesson from before and slashed 50 times. Then the third time, the fourth time, each time better than the last. Zichun spent less than a quarter of an hour to decompose one. It seemed that his speed wasn't as fast as a normal decomposition, but this was only the first day of Zichun's comprehension. It would only get faster and faster in the future. Butterball turned around and realized that Diwu, who was originally standing there, had already left. After a short break, Zichun continued to attack with his saber. This time, his speed was faster and his control of strength was more precise. After dissecting 5 of them in a row, Zichun clearly felt weak. He immediately took out the Death Soul Stone. He did not avoid Butterball, and just like that, he recovered. Butterball naturally noticed this. He ran over again and stared at the Death Soul Stone in Zichun's hand. Zichun, where did you get this Death Soul Stone? Butterball asked excitedly. With your current strength, it's impossible for you to obtain such a thing. After 15 breaths, Zichun opened his eyes. The energy in the Death Soul Stone kept entering his body and recovering his energy. The recovery speed was faster than elixirs in the outside world. Is this thing very valuable? Zichun kept the Death Soul Stone. Butterball curled his lips and said, What do you think? Zichun, with your current situation, it's impossible for you to obtain the Death Soul Stone. Tell me, did Fairy Shanya give it to you? She's your relative, right? Zichun ignored him and continued to gather his energy to decompose the next mutated beast. After grasping the entry-level method, the next step was to familiarize himself with it. This was nothing to Zichun. With the Death Soul Stone's recovery, Zichun's decomposition speed became faster and faster. Today's mission was completed earlier than usual, and Zichun was still full of energy when he returned. After returning, Zichun continued to refine the Death Soul Stone to strengthen himself. The next day, Zichun woke up early and went to the operation room. Butterball also came early and watched Zichun perform his blade. At this moment, Zichun could perform close to 100 slashes at once, which was a huge improvement compared to yesterday. Seems like the Death Soul Stone is really extraordinary. Your improvement speed is really fast. Butterball exclaimed. By the time everyone had arrived, Zichun had already dissected 30 of them, which made them extremely surprised. Diwu walked to the door and said, Zichun, your mission today is 110 slashes. Zichun didn't say anything. Those surprised people laughed again. It seemed like Diwu was determined not to let Zichun rest. However, after Zichun performed his blade, everyone's smile froze. In an instant, he performed more than 100 slashes. The dazzling light dazzled everyone. Zichun landed on the ground and started to rest. After recovering, he continued to perform his blade slashes. He realized that his recovery speed seemed to be speeding up. His endurance in performing his blade slashes was also getting stronger. Even the time he could stay in the air was lengthened. On this day, Zichun completed his mission. Although he worked overtime, it was much easier than usual. On the next day, Diwu didn't continue to increase the number of slashes. Zichun used this day to increase his proficiency. His improvement was huge every day. Everyone saw it and was shocked. Of course, there was a price to pay for the improvement. The second Death Soul Stone's power was depleted. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. The number of slashes Zichun performed was also increasing. However, as his proficiency increased, this was no longer a big deal to him. Yao Yi came to look for Zichun for the second time to express his dissatisfaction. Diwu looked at Yao Yi and replied, His workload is already 150 slashes. What do you think I should do? I remember that this should be your record, right? Also, it's a record after you came here for a few years. Yao Yi said coldly, You're not going to cooperate? Diwu said, Yao Yi, you've always been so domineering because you're protected by a true master. Of course, you've also displayed your abilities. But I want to tell you that this is Blood Battle City. We have our own rules. You can be willful occasionally, but you can't act recklessly. This is your answer to me. Yao Ye's gaze became even colder. This is a warning to you. Diwu lifted his head and looked at Yao Yi. As for an answer, you're actually not qualified for me to give you an answer. What did you say? Yao Ye's eyes were already filled with coldness. The reason why I've been cooperating with you these days is because I cherish talents. I have the intention to train Zichun. Perhaps after many years, there'll be another talented general in Death Valley, or another candidate for the 10 talents. Diwu waved his hand and said, Leave? I have my own arrangements regarding Zichun. He already gave the order to chase him out. Diwu, I thought highly of you, so I came to look for you. I didn't expect you to be so unappreciative. Don't blame me for being impolite. Yao Yi left with a gloomy expression. Zichun's path back to his residence was blocked by someone. It was Wei Hua. Beside him were 4 fat and muscular men. Their gazes were extremely unfriendly. Zichun looked at the 5 of them and smiled. Kid, you're still acting dumb, right? Let me tell you, this trick is useless in front of me. Wei Hua walked forward and clenched his fists. The other 4 surrounded Zichun. Zichun said, You've misunderstood. What I meant was, thank you for coming because I've also endured for a long time. After speaking, Zichun threw out a punch without any hesitation. Martial arts. Even if he couldn't use his power, he still had his skills. Banging sounds could be heard continuously, and there were even wails. 1 against 5. The 5 of them were defeated easily. Chapter 3970. He punched and pulled back his fist. Zichun did an unnecessary action like abdomen and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He looked at the 5 people who were in pain. How satisfying! He walked forward. Wei Hua was so frightened that he quickly dodged. At this moment, his eyes were filled with fear. Zichun was too strong. His punches were too fast and heavy. He could not react at all. 5 against 1. But they could not even touch the corner of his clothes. As he walked past Wei Hua, Zichun suddenly turned around and looked at them. The few of them shuddered in fear again. Thank you. There are not many good people like you in this world. Zichun said gratefully, You know I want to beat someone up, so you came to me. Zichun was in a good mood. A smile appeared on the old man's face. His moves are swift and decisive. It looks like the fighting techniques of the sacred mountain. This is interesting. 15 minutes later, Wei Hua's voice sounded outside Zichun's door. Zichun, get out here. Zichun put away the Death Soul Stone, opened the door, and walked out of the room. This time, there was one more person besides the 5 people. That person said, Did you beat them up? Zichun shook his head and said, No. Nonsense. The injuries on our faces and bodies are all caused by you, Wei Hua said angrily. Are you talking nonsense? Zichun looked at Wei Hua. Fighting is forbidden here. Moreover, we haven't spoken more than 3 sentences since we met. Why would I beat you up? You. Wei Hua did not know how to explain. Zichun looked at the other 4. Don't tell me you're also saying that I beat you up? Don't tell me I beat up 5 strangers? After saying that, Zichun returned to his room and closed the door. Don't disturb me. I have to work early in the morning. The other party looked at Wei Hua and asked, Did he really beat you up? Wei Hua nodded and said, I swear. He said he's not familiar with you. Then why did he beat you up? And he beat up the 5 of you by himself? The other party continued to ask. Wei Hua naturally couldn't give a reason, but he insisted that he was beaten. The other party nodded and said, I will report this matter to the higher-ups. The so-called higher-ups referred to Zhang Jingjing. After Zhang Jingjing learned of this matter, he waved his hand and said, I understand. How should we deal with this? The other party asked. Forget it. Zhang Jingjing said. Forget it. They broke the rules. How can we just let it go like this? The person who came was very puzzled. Not only did he fail to beat someone up, he was beaten up instead. After that, he even complained. That Wei Hua can be considered a weirdo. Zhang Jingjing smiled and said, Let's leave it at that. I'll deal with it. The person had no choice but to leave. Zhang Jingjing naturally wouldn't deal with this matter. He had heard about Zichun's recent situation. After knowing that everything was arranged by Diwu, he didn't do anything unnecessary. Who was Diwu? Others didn't know, but Zhang Jingjing knew very well. When he became the steward, the elders in his family had warned him repeatedly not to suppress Diwu just because he had a high position. When Zhang Jingjing asked for the reason, the elders didn't tell him. They only told him not to provoke Diwu and reminded him repeatedly. He had observed Diwu for the past few years. Although Diwu hadn't broken through, he had nurtured many talents. For example, Guanche, the head of the current generation's 10 heroes. It was said that Guanche was very respectful to Diwu. Other than Diwu, Zhang Jingjing also knew Butterball. He was also in the control room. It was said that he wasn't well-liked and was hated by everyone. However, he had also stayed there for a long time, almost comparable to Diwu. He didn't break through either. It was unknown if he had exhausted his potential. Diwu didn't increase the number. Zichen's work and rest gradually became regular, but he didn't stop cultivating. He could feel his improvement and growth. Hence, he didn't dare to slack off. Because compared to the others, it was very difficult for Zichen to advance to Earth's soul realm. He was silently increasing the number of people for himself. At the same time, he was pursuing speed and precision. 10 days later, in the control room, a person broke through and advanced to Earth's soul realm. For a moment, all sorts of congratulations were heard. At this moment, the other party left the control room and entered the inner city. He was prepared to understand the rules and participate in the battle. Every day, there would be news regarding Lan Gumeng and Shanya. It was said that among the 10 elites, several people had launched attacks on the two of them, but they still didn't receive any response. On this day, Zichen, who had returned early, saw a person standing outside his house. After seeing Zichen, that person said indifferently, "You are Zichen?" Zichen sized him up and asked, "Who are you?" The person said, "Let me introduce myself. I'm Xingue. I have something to say to you today." Zichen glanced at him and said, "If you have something to say, ask your master to come." Xingue was slightly stunned and asked subconsciously, "Why do you say that?" Zichen looked back at Xingue and said in disdain, "You dare to touch Shanya with your looks?" Xingue's face turned gloomy. "Seems like you are not stupid. You know everything." A cold voice sounded. A handsome young man in white walked out from the darkness. It was Yao Yi. Actually, it wasn't his intention to appear here. It was just that Diwu was too arrogant and didn't take him seriously. Weihui was too stupid. He didn't teach Diwu a lesson and was beaten up instead. He originally wanted Xingue to come out. After all, he was an Earth Soul Realm expert, who knew that Xingue would see through him at a glance. "You finally appeared. I thought you were going to be a coward. I was prepared to play with you for a few more days." Zichen looked at Yao Yi and mocked, "Do you want to die?" Yao Yi's eyes had a cold glint. Zichen pointed at his feet and said, "Do you want me to lend you some courage? Let's see if you dare to fight here." Yao Yi's expression changed. Zichen said, "Seems like you don't dare to fight. Then why are you still trying to scare me? Are you stupid?" Just as Zichen finished speaking, the old man guarding the gate laughed. "Tianju, what do you think of this young man?" The old man suddenly said, "He has a glib tongue like a woman. This is a negotiation, not a quarrel." This was Reverend Tianju's reply. Of course, only the two heavenly soul realm experts could hear it. "You are just embarrassed. The grandson you have high hopes for is actually suppressing a human soul realm expert." The old man guarding the gate chuckled. "Suppressing? Are you stupid? This little girl is just trying to win with her tongue." Reverend Tianju said unhappily, "This shows that my grandson is focused on cultivation and doesn't care about anything." "Oh, then let's see what kind of result they can come up with today." The old man guarding the gate said with a smile, "Do you know who I am?" Yao Yi really didn't dare to fight here. Not only was Zichen right, but he was also ridiculed. He suppressed his anger and stared coldly at Zichen. This time, Zichen carefully sized up Yao Yi and said, "You're young. Your brain isn't very good, and your personality is so arrogant. Since you've been able to survive until now, you obviously have some skills. I guess you should belong to the 10 heroes." Yao Yi's face showed some complacency. The 10 heroes, that was an amazing existence. Zichen continued, "There are strong and weak in the 10 heroes. Those who are ranked at the top should be very steady and cautious. For someone like you who has no brain and no shrewdness, your happiness and anger are all on your face. You can barely enter the 10 heroes. Thanks to the blessing of the ancestors, I guess your real identity should be Yao Yi, who has Reverend Tian Hun behind him." Chapter 39-71. The old gatekeeper laughed out loud. It was the first time he heard such humorous words. The 10 heroes represented the highest honor. Even if it was the 10th place, it was still a remarkable existence. But in Zichen's mouth, it became sarcastic words. Yao Yi had some complaints about the 10th place. He was once targeted by Shanya and Lan Guming. It was as if it was not a supreme honor, but a disgrace. This kid is really ignorant. Sage Tianju's angry voice sounded. It could be imagined that the other party must be fuming. Tianju, why are you angry with a kid? The gatekeeper said. I'm not angry. I'm being reasonable. Every one of the 10 heroes has experienced on the battlefield and used countless honors to prove themselves. How can they be tarnished by a kid? Tianju, don't be angry. I think he's right. If you count backward, your grandson is really the first. Old Thing Xiao, do you want to fight with me? The complacency on Yao Ye's face disappeared. His facial features were distorted because of anger. If it were not for the rules here and him being warned countless times, he really wanted to slap the guy in front of him to death. What? Did I guess wrong? Zichen smiled and said, then forget it. I can't guess. You better introduce yourself and tell me why you're looking for me. Xingue, who had appeared previously, had already left after hearing Zichen's sarcastic words. If he heard the latter part, he would probably be scared to death. The identity and title of the 10 heroes were not for ridicule. It represented infinite killing intent. After being scolded by Zichen, Yao Yi was so angry that he forgot the purpose of his visit. He was speechless for a moment. Zichen restrained his smile and said, You're here for Shanya, right? You know? Yao Yi regretted it as soon as the words left his mouth. The other party could even guess who he was. Naturally, he could guess this point. Zichen said, Don't you just want me to pass on your message? Why go through so much trouble? Yao Yi waved his hand. An array of light appeared, isolating the surroundings. He said coldly, Since you already know, I will not beat around the bush. Help me pass on the message, and I will give you a piece of Death Soul Stone after you succeed. Zichen pursed his lips and said, You're one of the 10 heroes. Not only are you brainless, but you're also so stingy. You only gave me 1 Death Soul Stone. I thought you would give me 8 or 10. Yao Yi gritted his teeth and said, If this matter really succeeds, I can also give it to you. Zichen shook his head and said, I'm sorry, but I can't help you pass the message to Shanya. Without waiting for Yao Yi to say more threatening words, Zichen changed the topic and said, However, I can help you pass a message to Lan Guming. Fairy Lan? Yao Yi was a little surprised. Zichen nodded and said, Yes, is there a problem? Or do you think that Fairy Lan is not as beautiful as Shanya? Yao Yi shook his head, but did not immediately agree. Shanya and Lan Guming were equally beautiful, but their temperaments were different. It was reasonable to say that Yao Yi should be happy that Zichen could pass the message. A wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of Zichen's mouth, and he said, If it's Fairy Lan, then I can help you pass the message for free. She can even put in a few good words for you. For example, she can talk about how handsome you are and how kind you are. She will definitely be happy. Yao Ye's expression was still changing. He was not happy, but was worried. On the other side, the gatekeeper said, Tianju, how is it now? The sound insulation technique that Yao Yi activated with a wave of his hand was nothing to the 2 heavenly soul realm experts. This kid has some skills. This time, Sage Tianju did not show any anger. Because Zichen's words and the change in Yao Ye's expression were enough to express a lot of information. Zichen said, You don't know how to choose, right? Yao Yi looked at Zichen. Zichen said indifferently, Do you know why Shanya hates you? How do you know? Yao Yi asked, but this was equivalent to admitting it in disguise. Zichen said, Because you don't like her at all. Why do you pretend to like her and pursue her? Nonsense. Yao Yi said angrily, I really like Fairy Shanya. Zichen smiled and said, Of course, such a beauty. Who wouldn't like her after a few more glances? But I guess, among the 10 heroes, there should be many who like Shanya, right? Yao Ye's expression began to change again, but this was equivalent to admitting it. The reason why Shanya is so popular, but Fairy Lan, who is equally beautiful, is not? I guess it's not that no one likes Fairy Lan, but that your elders have orders, right? Zichen said again. This time, Yao Ye's eyes began to flicker. Do you know why? Zichen asked. Yao Yi did not answer, but Zichen also got the answer. The divine soul goddess was still a secret. Even her heavenly soul realm family members were not told. The reason why Shanya had many pursuers was that those elders saw Shanya's extraordinary potential. In addition, Shanya was not as special as Lan Gumeng, so they all wanted to win Shanya over. Of course, on the surface, it was to form a cultivation companion, but in fact, it was to strengthen their own forces. This was called killing two birds with one stone. Zichen continued, "You couldn't find a way with Shanya, so you took a step back and decided to start with me. Think about it. If you know of my existence, how can others not know? It's just that you're too impatient, so you became a clown. Others have been watching you make a fool of yourself and maybe waiting to trick you at any time." Yao Ye's expression was still changing. Zichen continued, "Believe it or not, after you come to find me today, someone else will come to find me tomorrow or the day after. However, their attitude will be completely different from yours. When they express their goodwill to me, they might even give me 1 or 2 Death Soul stones. And these people will all come for Shanya. As for those who have designs on Fairy Lawn, they won't come to me." Those who dared to have designs on Lan Gumeng naturally had great confidence in winning over a divine soul goddess, so there was no need for a mere mortal soul realm cultivator to pass the message. "Now that things are clear, I'm going to rest." Zichen turned around and left, returning to his room to continue cultivating. Yao Yi stood there, motionless. "How's this kid's mind?" the gatekeeper asked. "Extraordinary." This was the secret answer. Yao Yi took a deep look at Zichen's residence, then turned around and left. The next day, Zichen didn't go to the operations room, but cultivated in his room. Diwu didn't send anyone to rush him. Butterball came once, worried that something might have happened to Zichen. Zichen also asked Butterball to apply for leave. On that day, several Earth Soul Realms went to the operations room to look for Zichen, but they didn't find him. As for Zichen's residence, some people came, but Zichen didn't see anyone. He was cultivating, and he was in a hurry, because he wanted to break through quickly. The rules here were very strict, and he dared to treat Yao Yi this way as a mortal soul because of the rules. But the people who set the rules were ultimately people, and where there were people, there would naturally be exceptions, so Zichen was very uneasy. Chapter 3972. A piece of Death Soul Stone contained an enormous amount of energy, because it was condensed from an Earth Soul Realm life form. Zichen had already refined 2 pieces, and was now refining the third one. Judging from his body's absorption speed, he should be able to refine it in about 10 days. Yao Yi never came to look for Zichen again. After returning, he carefully thought about Zichen's words, and chose to watch silently. Just as Zichen said, everyone who came to look for Zichen was very polite. Even if Zichen did not open the door, no one forced it. There were even people guarding outside every day. It seemed that in an instant, everyone showed kindness to Zichen. Butterball only came to deliver a meal to Zichen on the first day. After that, this job was taken over by others. However, Zichen only opened the door for Butterball. Everyone else delivered the food outside the door. 5 days later, Shanya came again. Zichen opened the door and gestured for her to come in. "I just came back from the battlefield. How's the situation here?" Shanya took the initiative to pour herself a glass of water. "The situation is good," Zichen said. "You have to be careful on the battlefield. Don't be careless." Shanya nodded and said, "Indeed, we have to be careful. In Death Canyon, there are not only the soul-devouring clan, but also many powerful exotic beasts. They are very difficult to deal with. In addition, the harsh environment can sometimes kill." Shanya suddenly turned around and looked at Zichen. "Did you know? Last time, there was a team that did not return in time and encountered a death storm. In the end, they were all annihilated. In the face of that storm, no one dared to rescue them. They could only resign themselves to fate." Zichen said, "Then you have to be even more careful. Try to get experienced people to join the team." Wani said the same. Moreover, he has a sense of propriety. With that, Shanya took out another 2 pieces of Death Soul stones. Zichen didn't refuse this time. He didn't even hesitate and put it away. Shanya was a little surprised. This was not Zichen's style. Zichen explained, "I feel that it's useful for me to break through to the next realm. Furthermore, My refining speed has increased a lot recently. Shanya smiled. That's good. You're always welcome to join our team. After Shanya left, Zichun also ended his cultivation and went to the operation room. With Zichen's arrival, everyone stopped what they were doing and a smile appeared on their faces. One of them stepped forward and said, Zichun, this is your new position? Unlike the last position, Zichen's position was at the very front this time. Everyone's attitude towards him had changed. No, I think that place suits me better. Zichun continued to walk to his original position. Under everyone's gaze, he picked up the familiar knife. He raised his eyebrows. He leaped. He brandished his knife. The saber light flashed, dazzling everyone. When it landed on the ground, one of the beast's bodies had already been decomposed. It was done in one go. Butterball was stunned. Zichun, who had been in seclusion for a few days, had improved even more. With such speed, how much could he decompose every day? Cheers rang out from all around. Di Wu, who was far away, revealed a smile on his face. Zichun was expressionless. He adjusted his breath slightly and continued to decompose. At noon, someone invited Zichun to eat, but he rejected. Butterball brought food over. You don't plan to go back? Butterball asked. I'll continue to cultivate. Zichun shook his head and said, You treat your work as cultivation? Butterball laughed. Can't I? Zichun asked back. Sure, I just feel that you're a little strange. Butterball shook his head. Actually, he was very happy because at least he had a companion, even if Zichun did not talk much most of the time. Moreover, it was obvious that Zichun had turned over a new leaf, but he didn't like anyone else. He was the only one who treated him differently. Butterball, why don't you change your job? Zichun glanced at Butterball and asked, Aren't you tired? Butterball said with a smile, This is quite good. A person is free and unrestrained, and no one cares. If it were anywhere else, people would roll their eyes at me. Zichun had been here for a long time, so he naturally knew Butterball's popularity. Therefore, Butterball did not pretend. Zichun put down the food box and patted Butterball's shoulder. Then work hard and cultivate. Hurry up and break through. No. Butterball shook his head and said, Breaking through means going to the battlefield. I'm afraid of death. Zichun was somewhat speechless. He did not even know how to comfort him. He continued to decompose with his saber. To others, this might be work, but to Zichun, this was cultivation. An earth soul appeared at the door of the operation room. I thought you would go back to rest and wait for you at the door. I didn't expect you to not go back. Sorry, I may not be able to do anything. Zichun, who did not know the other party, said, But I won't let you come here for nothing. I can help the person behind you to pass a message to Fairy Lawn. As for Fairy Shanya, I'm sorry I can't help. Butterball was stunned again. Could it be that Zichun even knew Lan Shenzi? And they were also very familiar with each other? He looked up and down at Zichun. There was nothing special about him. In terms of appearance, he was not as handsome as him. How could he have such a good relationship with the two fairies? Butterball could not accept it. He even looked down at himself. He was indeed quite handsome. He felt that God was unfair. The person stood there. When he heard Zichun's words, he did not know how to say the words he had prepared. You can go. Go back and ask the person behind you. Zichun ordered him to leave. The other party could only leave because the person who had instructed him before he came had told him to leave a good impression. For the next few people, Zichun responded with the same words. Just as he had expected, the people who came were all interested in Shania, and they couldn't open up the situation at Shania. A few days passed. Zichun's improvement every day could be said to be rapid. However, after this rapid improvement, the consumption of the Death Soul Stone was rapid. The third stone was used up in just a few days. Zichun's decomposition method was extremely taxing, but his improvement was also very obvious. In fact, after Zichun was no longer targeted, he would even take out the Death Soul Stone and refine it in front of everyone when he was exhausted. At that time, everyone's eyes lit up. They were very envious. Zichun decomposed more than 200 Death Soul Stones every day. This had already surpassed the supervisor at that time. However, Zichun still did not break through. This puzzled many people, especially Butterball. On this day, when Zichun came to the operation room, he did not see Butterball. This surprised him. After all, Butterball never skipped work. Half an hour later, everyone arrived and began their busy day. Chapter 39:73. Butterball's words were like a clap of thunder, exploding in the operation room. The originally noisy surroundings instantly became quiet. Everyone put down the boning knives in their hands and turned to look at Butterball with a stunned expression. Weren't the two fairies heavily protected? How could something happen to them? At this moment, Butterball became the center of attention, and no one felt disgusted. They all wanted to hear what happened next. What did you say? Zichun looked at Butterball. Butterball panted and said, I just received news that something happened to the two fairies in the Death Canyon. Zichun's expression changed instantly, and the surroundings were in an uproar. Zichun quickly threw away his work clothes and walked out of the door. What happened? Tell me in detail. As he spoke, Zichun had already walked out of the door. Butterball had to follow. The others also dropped the work in their hands one after another and followed him out. I don't know the details. I just heard the news earlier, so I immediately came to tell you. Butterball trotted behind Zichun. No one went to rescue them? Zichun began to speed up. No one. Butterball shook his head. Zichun suddenly stopped and stared at Butterball. What did you say? No one went to rescue them? How is this possible? As far as he knew, the two women were very popular. Now that something happened, how could no one go to rescue them? Butterball said, It seems that something happened in the canyon, and no one dared to go to rescue them. Zichun began to run in the direction of the inner city. Butterball shouted, Zichun, come back. Ordinary people are not allowed to go there. Zichun didn't respond, but he didn't stop. Butterball stomped his feet and followed. The people who came later didn't stop either. Obviously, they all wanted to watch the show. There were usually guards between the inner city and the outer city, and not everyone could enter. But today, those guards were not there. Zichun rushed in, but no one stopped Butterball. So what if you went to the inner city? No one can save them, Butterball shouted from behind. Zichun, you're too impulsive. Zichun had never been to the inner city before, so he did not know who to look for. However, when he arrived, he had an idea in his mind. Before he even reached the inner city, he shouted, Yao Yi, come out! Yao Yi, come out! Yao Yi, come out! Zichun's voice rang out. He wasn't familiar with this place, but he was very familiar with Yao Yi of the Tin Greats. And the only one that Zichun could name was Yao Yi. How dare you? It was Shungue. He had just heard the news and was about to go to the city wall to take a look when he heard Zichun shout. He angrily rebuked, This is the inner city. Who let you in? Tell me where Yao Yi is, or die. Zichun quickly rushed forward. Before Shungue could react, he grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up. Zichun, you're courting death. Put me down. Shungue roared angrily. But in the next moment, his voice came to an abrupt halt. He felt a cold sensation coming from his neck. It was the boning knife that Zichun had casually picked up before he arrived. At this moment, it was flashing with a sharp light. If you don't speak, you'll die. Zichun's eyes were extremely cold. This time, they were filled with killing intent. Butterball, who had been following behind, jumped in fright. He immediately stepped forward and said, Zichun, don't be rash. The rules here. Zichun interrupted Butterball. The current rules are useless to me. Life or death. You can choose one now. At this moment, Zichun was filled with murderous intent. Shungue, who was an earth soul, was shocked to discover that his strength seemed to be restricted. He actually felt a long-lost fear. This shouldn't have happened. He was an earth soul who had been on the battlefield. How could he be frightened by a mere human soul? However, his body started to tremble uncontrollably. Then, he subconsciously looked in a certain direction. There was a tall city wall there. At the moment, there were many people standing on top of it. Zichun threw Shungue aside and rushed towards the city wall. Butterball glanced at Shungue and suppressed the shock in his heart. He gritted his teeth and followed Luo Yunyang. He didn't care about the rules. He had to keep an eye on Zichun. He couldn't let anything happen to him. Yao Yi, get the hell out here. Before they even got close to the city wall, Zichen's angry roar rang out again, attracting the attention of many people. When these people discovered that the one making a fuss was actually a human soul realm expert, their expressions became strange. Zichen, you're courting death. Sure enough, Yao Yi, who heard the voice, shouted angrily. He was on top of the tall city wall. There were many young elites standing around Yao Yi. When they saw the enraged Yao Yi, their expressions changed. They had heard of Zichen's name before. They didn't expect that he would dare to come here and treat Yao Yi in such a way. Zichen didn't slow down and quickly climbed up the city wall. He was filled with killing intent. Wherever he passed, those earth souls had strange looks in their eyes and made way for him. Zichen came in front of Yao Yi and pointed his boning knife at him. Speak. Did you do it? Yao Yi glared at Zichen. Are you crazy? Zichen said coldly. Did you set this up? Yao Yi cursed angrily. That was a bloodstorm. It was unpredictable. How could I be so capable? The others were a little surprised because Yao Yi, one of the 10 elites, was clearly stunned. Otherwise, he wouldn't have explained himself in such a flustered and exasperated manner. Then why didn't you save him? Zichen asked again. His eyes were extremely cold. Yao Yi said angrily, that's a death storm. There's not even a 10% chance of survival. Who would dare to go in? If you don't believe me, take a look for yourself. Yao Yi pointed to the other side of the city wall. Zichen turned his head and saw countless blood clouds rolling. Below the blood clouds was an endless canyon. The canyon was also blood red, as if it was dyed with blood. Zichen didn't notice it before, but when he noticed the blood-red canyon, a terrifying pressure hit him and landed on his body. His face instantly paled. His heart palpitated and his organs seemed to be displaced. This was the Death Canyon? Zichen felt his heartbeat accelerate, and fear emerged in his heart. It was as if looking at this place was a great fear. If you have the ability, go save him, Yao Yi said sarcastically when he saw Zichen's pale face. The surrounding people also sneered. This human soul was still too young. However, there were also some people who began to suspect the relationship between the two fairies and Zichen, who was acting so angrily. Zichen turned to look at Yao Yi. He had calmed down a lot. Where's Wanhe? Wanhe was the captain the moment he arrived. He was very famous, but Zichen dared to call him by his name. This made some people's expressions change slightly. He's also inside, Yao Yi said. No one went to save him? Zichen asked again. Yao Yi shook his head and said helplessly, no one dared to go. What about the heavenly souls? They didn't go either? That death storm is strange. The higher the cultivation level, the faster you die. If the Earth Soul Realm has a chance of survival, then the Heavenly Soul Realm will definitely die. I'll use it however I want to. Tell me, how do I go in? The old man said, rules are not to be broken. Zichen said angrily, old man, not only are you blind, you're still so stubborn. The old man narrowed his eyes and a cold intent appeared. The surrounding temperature suddenly dropped. The expressions of the surrounding people became interesting one after another. Even the expressions of the elites changed slightly. Zichen, a human soul, really did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He dared to scold the old man in front of everyone. Was he tired of living? What? You want to slap me to death, right? You don't have to do it. Just throw me into the canyon. Zichen said angrily, life and death is up to fate. The old man shook his head. Old man, are you going to let me in or not? Zichen stared at the old man fiercely. The old man shook his head again. He would not let Zichen in. Zichen had no choice. He could not really beat the old man up. Moreover, from the changes in the expressions of the others, he sensed that he might not be able to beat the old man. Suddenly, Zichen had an idea. He said, what about this? I'll use a chance to retreat in exchange for a chance to advance. Zichen took out a token. It was given to him by the old gatekeeper when he came here. He said that it would give him a chance to retreat. Right now, Zichen had no use for the opportunity to retreat. He hoped that it could help him advance once. This is a battle order. The moment they saw the token in Zichen's hand, many people's expressions changed. They were very surprised. Only some special general realm cultivators could have this token. How did Zichun, a human soul, get it? Yao Yi looked at Zichun. After Zichun told him some things last time, he found that Zichin's vision was very unique. He did not expect Lin Fan to take out another battle order today. Even he had only received the battle badge when he became one of the 10 elites. There was surprise in the old man's eyes as he asked, "Where did you get this token?" "You don't have to worry about that. I didn't steal it. Let me ask you, does it work? Can you let me in?" Zichin looked at the old man with the token in his hand. He did not want to waste any more time. He was very anxious. "If you have this token, you can," the old man said after a slight hesitation. Zichun sneered. "You said that the rules can't be broken." The old man's expression did not change when he was mocked. Zichun gave the token to the old man. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and open the entrance." "Zichun," a voice suddenly came from behind. Zichun turned around and saw Diwu. Diwu was walking towards him. "You don't have to stop me. You can't stop me," Zichun said. Diwu came forward and patted Zichin's shoulder. "I'm not here to stop you. Instead, I admire your courage. This is for you. I hope it can bring you good luck." There was a green gourd in Diwu's hand. It looked like it was carved out of jade. There were a few cracks on the surface of the gourd, which affected its beauty. "Take it. It might be useful." Diwu did not allow any explanation and stuffed it into Zichin's hand. Zichun was stunned. He did not have a bad impression of Diwu. After all, everything was done by Yao Yi. Although Yao Yi gave him pressure, it was not over the limit. He did not expect Diwu to give him something at this moment. "I made it. I was almost too late." At this moment, Butterball's voice came from behind. Chapter 39:75. A black beast stood in front of Butterball. Butterball wrote it here. The strange beast looked like the legendary Qilin beast, but there was a single horn on its head that curved towards the sky. It was covered with thick black hair and looked mighty and ferocious. It was not an ordinary beast. Zichun had never seen such a beast, not even in the Saint Spirit realm. The expressions of the surrounding people changed when they saw the exotic beast. One of them exclaimed, "Is this the Xieji beast in the Death Canyon?" Yao Ye's gaze changed as he stared at Butterball. Of course, he knew Butterball. More than half of the people in the Earth Soul realm knew Butterball. He was an existence that no one liked. He had endless work every day and was very timid. When Yao Yi entered the operation room for the first time, Butterball was squatting in the corner to deal with the internal organs of the beast. After he advanced and left, Butterball was still there. However, such an inconspicuous fat man had actually brought a Xieji beast with him. Zichin also saw the beast's extraordinariness and his expression changed. Butterball walked forward with a smug and proud face. At this moment, he was the center of attention and the source of shock. The Xieji beast followed behind him like the most obedient pet. "I told you before that my work is extraordinary. You just didn't believe me." Butterball patted the Xieji beast's head and said, "I found it when I was dealing with the internal organs. It was still in the womb, so I raised it. It's called Fatty. What do you think? Isn't the name very domineering?" Zichun was speechless. "Come, Fatty. This is the Zichin I told you about. He has never despised me and is the first one to treat me as a friend." Butterball put his face on the Xieji beast's head and said, "Zichun is going to the Death Canyon. It's very dangerous there. I hope you can help him." The Xieji nodded in a very human-like manner. The others in the surroundings were extremely shocked. It was common knowledge that the Xieji beasts were the descendants of the Xieji divine beast. All of them were unruly, bloodthirsty, and brutal. Moreover, their combat strength was extremely formidable. In history, the number of Heichi beasts killed was very limited. It was said that the most recent time was hundreds of years ago, when a soul hunter in the general realm killed one. He didn't expect someone to have such a pet. At this moment, countless people looked at Fatty with gazes filled with envy. Zichin shook her head and said, "I'll go in alone." Butterball said, "Take Fatty with you. You'll have a better chance of survival." Looking at Fatty, Butterball sighed and said, "It originally belonged to the canyon. It's a pity that I, a human soul, am unable to make a breakthrough, so I can't bring it back to its hometown to take a look. This time, I'm counting on you." Fatty came in front of Zichun and bent his front legs, signaling for Zichun to come up. Butterball said, as a friend, I can only help you this much. Time was running out, so Zichun didn't delay any longer. He turned over and got on Fatty's back. Thank you, Butterball. Butterball said loudly, My name is not Butterball. My real name is White Bear Rue. If you can come back alive, I'll treat you to a drink. I'll try my best. Zichun walked forward. The old man who accepted the token had already opened a passage for Zichun. He looked at the Sheji beast under Zichun with a complicated expression. He seemed to feel sorry for it, just like the others. Zichun, do you mean what you said? Butterball suddenly shouted. What? Zichun turned his head in confusion. I'll go to the canyon with you. Are you willing to let Shanya Fairy marry me? Butterball, who had always been timid, plucked up his courage and asked eagerly, A toad wants to eat a swan's meat. Go away. I'll deal with you when I come back. Those were Zichun's last words. Fatty brought him into the passage. He entered the canyon and went to the dangerous area with his human soul realm. The entire city wall was extremely quiet. No one knew what they were thinking about. The canyon was filled with blood clouds. They couldn't see the people below. Perhaps Zichun was already dead. Many people felt sorry for him. After all, Zichun's death wasn't a big deal. What they felt sorry for was the Sheji beast. Compared to leaving this time, it was impossible for him to come back. Human soul realm wasn't allowed to enter this place. Hence, after Zichun disappeared, Butterball left in a hurry. Diwu took a look at the canyon and turned to leave. The old man looked at Diwu and said, I thought you would never come to this place. Diwu said, Actually, your data is wrong. For the past 1,000 years, the survival rate of saving people in the death storm was 100% and not 10% as you said. The old man sighed and recalled the scene back then. A general realm risked his life to enter the death storm and brought back his comrade who had gone through fire and water with him. Although he returned successfully, that general realm's realm dropped permanently. He had no choice but to leave the city wall and return to the outer city. Hearing their conversation, Yao Ye's expression changed again. There were many people who knew Diwu, but only a few knew about his past. The old man guarding the gate was making hand seals with his eyes wide open because he couldn't see through the scene. However, there seemed to be a force that stopped him from deducing. Tianju, what's going on? The old man guarding the gate who got nothing asked. I'm not sure. There's a force that's hiding the mystery. Sage Tianju said. You can't see it too? If I didn't guess wrongly, that battle order should be yours. The old man guarding the gate said, It's mine, but I still got nothing from deducing with the battle order. Could it be that someone schemed against us? Don't drag me into this. What does it have to do with me? Besides, who can interfere with a heavenly soul realm? Is it just a coincidence? The old man guarding the gate muttered. I just happened to give him a battle order and then helped him. What you should be concerned about now isn't this matter, but why the divine soul goddess is in the death storm. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. After entering the bloody canyon, the heart-palpitating feeling became even more intense. Just like when he first came here, the pressure from the canyon made Zichun's breathing difficult. There was a reason why everyone didn't let him in. Under normal circumstances, a human soul realm expert might not be able to survive here, and under the death storm, there was no chance of survival. Just as Zichun's body couldn't withstand the terrifying pressure, the spirit robe on his body suddenly glowed. There was a faint light that filled his body, and the heart-palpitating feeling seemed to have disappeared a little. Fatty, who was trembling slightly, also glowed and returned to normal. The canyon was huge, and one couldn't see the end of it. It was filled with blood clouds, and nothing could be seen. Chapter 39:76. The blood cloud pressed down, and a strong pressure filled the surroundings. The spirit robe helped Zichun adapt a little. Otherwise, Zichun would not be able to move an inch. Looking around, he could not tell the direction at all. It was almost impossible to find someone in such a situation. Come out and take a look, Zichun said. A ray of light appeared, and it was the ghost that he had not seen for a long time. It was the reason why Zichun came here. Otherwise, how could Zichun, who had never been here before, find them. The pressure here seemed to be nothing to the ghost, and it was not affected at all. At this moment, it was looking around, trying to sense the familiar aura. It was the first time Fatty came to the canyon, and it was very curious about everything around it. However, its eyes were also vigilant. Suddenly, the ghost stretched out its little paw and pointed in a direction. It had already found something. "Fatty, let's go." Zichun gently patted Fatty's head, and Fatty began to move forward. The wind whistled around and sand and stones flew, but Fatty walked as if it was flat ground. Its advantage in this place was gradually revealed. Zichun, who was moving forward, found that his cultivation method suddenly began to operate, and there seemed to be a strange force that entered his body. It was like refining the Death Soul Stone. This made Zichun's expression change, and he was a little stunned and a little surprised. At this moment, a ray of light appeared beside Zichun. It was the little fairy that he brought out from the bamboo sea world of the Fong family. After it appeared, it opened its mouth and took a deep breath. When the air was sucked into its stomach became round. The ghost was not surprised by the little fairy's appearance, and it was still leading the way for Zichun. Zichun asked, "Why did you come out?" "The power here is helpful to me." The little fairy swallowed the air around it. Usually, it only ate blue crystal coins or blue astral coins. It was the first time it could swallow air. Suddenly, a strong sense of danger appeared in Zichun's heart, and Fatty, who was under him, also stopped in an instant. A ray of light appeared from the hurricane ahead, heading straight for Zichun. It was a strange beast that was attacking Zichun. Zichun did not expect that an exotic beast would still be able to survive such a storm. He was a little surprised, but he did not panic in the face of danger. The bone-paring knife in his hand flashed as he stabbed forward. The moment he made contact with the exotic beast, the blade in his hand turned and pierced into the exotic beast's body. The next moment, saber light flashed. It was like dissecting exotic beasts in the control room. He had practiced this action countless times. Blood spurted out, and the strange beast that had launched the sneak attack was cut into a dozen pieces, falling to the sides. This scene happened extremely quickly. In the blink of an eye, life and death had been decided. Zichun continued to pat Fatty's head, and Fatty continued to move forward. But this time, it was obviously more careful. The boning knife was still dripping with blood. This was Zichun's only weapon for self-defense. As for the black stick that he had refined before, Zichun did not know if it was because it did not have any power, but he could not use it for the time being. After that sneak attack, Zichun had become more careful. The fairy seemed to have eaten its fill. After flying around Zichun once, it disappeared. Yu Gue was still showing the way, but it was no longer speaking to Zichun, but to Fatty. The two beasts seemed to have a unique way of communicating. Zichun looked around. At this moment, he could no longer see the scene 20 feet away. Zichun, who was moving forward, did not know that a blood shadow was silently following him at this moment. This blood shadow seemed to have merged with the surrounding blood clouds, and no one could discover it. Only the Soul Devourer clan and the Blood Soul clan dared to move forward in the storm of death. Their innate fighting strength was not strong, but once they entered the storm of death, it was as if they had become the masters. The Soul Hunters never moved forward in the storm of death. In addition to the horror of the storm itself, the Blood Soul clan often appeared in the storm, which was another main reason. The existence hidden in the dark had been silently watching Zichun, and it was also calculating in its heart. This Soul Hunter had not even awakened his power, so he should not be here. This made it feel strange, and it did not act rashly. What's more, the other party was riding an extremely rare Sheji beast, which made it even more afraid to let its guard down. So, it was observing and waiting for the right time. It had seen the other party's attack earlier, and it was very careful. Although it killed an exotic beast, the other party did not use the power of a soul hunter. It wanted to find out the other party's background. Not long after, the second exotic beast launched an attack at the soul hunter. This time, it attacked from behind. The soul hunter immediately leaped into the air, turned his body in midair, and quickly attacked with his knife. The knife flashed. Life and death were decided again. Again, it did not use any energy, only brute force and skill. The Shieji beast seemed to be in its infancy, and its perception was not sharp enough to detect danger in advance. That strange little beast seemed to only be able to sense the direction, and there was no danger. The Soul Hunter's brute force was nothing to be afraid of. Blood Shadow calculated the other party's strength in his heart. However, for the sake of safety, he still did not dare to move forward rashly. The third exotic beast appeared, and it was the third test. The result was the same. This made Blood Shadow feel relieved. I can definitely kill it in one hit. After 3 observations, he came to a conclusion and was ready to take action. Because even he couldn't get used to the deeper parts of the cave. 3 sneak attacks, which made Zichun even more nervous, because in this storm, Fatty's speed had also decreased, but the exotic beast seemed to be unaffected. At this moment, the feeling of danger appeared again. Zichun shouted and immediately jumped up, then turned around and attacked with his knife. It was the 4th exotic beast. Just as Zichun's knife landed on the other party's body, another sense of danger appeared. This time, it was a life and death crisis. There seemed to be a demon standing behind him. By the time Zichun sensed the abnormality, it was already too late. A blood-colored machete that looked like a cloud of blood appeared behind Zichun and went straight for his neck, as if it wanted to cut off Zichun's head directly. At this time, Zichun was already in the air, and he had launched an attack on the exotic beast, so he could not resolve the crisis behind him at all. He was very puzzled and shocked that there was an enemy in such a terrifying place. At the same time, he was in despair, because he was powerless to stop it. The machete approached and slashed at Zichun's neck. However, just as it was about to touch Zichun's skin, a dazzling light suddenly erupted from Zichun's body. This light turned into a solid protective light, protecting Zichun in it. Chapter 39:77. Blood Shadow's expression changed slightly when his sure kill attack was blocked. The defense in front of him didn't seem to be strong. He was prepared to break through the defense and kill. Light shone, and the power contained in the short knife became even more terrifying. At this moment, the gourd in Zichun's arms suddenly flew into the air. The gourd opened on its own, and a misty light sprayed out from it. Within the light, there was a dazzling flash of light. PFFF. Blood Shadow retreated quickly and hid in the blood clouds again. Zichun came back to his senses and caught the falling gourd. The gourd's mouth was already sealed. There were a few more cracks on it. Other than fear, he also felt lucky and grateful. If it wasn't for Diwu's gift, he would have been beheaded. Yugue and Fatty's expressions changed as well. Continue, but we have to be careful. Zichun didn't expect the Soul Eater clan to exist in such a harsh environment. Zichun, who had just escaped with his life, constantly warned himself to be careful. He held the gourd tightly in his left hand and the boning knife in his right. Yugue led the way for Fatty. Zichun lowered his head and saw the bloodstains on the ground. They were left behind by the Soul Eater clan. After hesitating for a while, he signaled Fatty to follow the bloodstains. He glanced at the gourd. Perhaps there was a chance to kill the other party. Fatty, who was moving forward, was changing his direction. After walking for more than 10 feet, Zichun changed his mind and continued to move forward. Because he thought of the sneak attacks from the mutated beasts. They should have been done by the other party. If the other party wanted to avoid him, he just had to find another mutated beast and make it bleed. While moving forward, Zichun's cultivation technique was still circulating. His body seemed to have become a funnel, and the energy of heaven and earth from all directions couldn't be filled up no matter what. That blood shadow appeared once again, but when it looked at Zichun, there was obvious fear in its eyes. But there was also passion. A soul hunter who wasn't qualified to come here had a body full of treasures. How could it not be moved? He was determined to get the Shieji beast. The little black beast was also extraordinary. There was also the elf that had appeared and disappeared before, and the gourd that could protect its owner by itself. When he thought of the gourd, he touched his chest. The light from before had directly pierced through his heart, almost taking his life. If the other party was a general-level soul hunter with such a precious treasure, he might have run away long ago. However, the other party was a soul hunter who was not qualified to come to this battlefield. He had plenty of ways to kill the other party. He stealthily concealed himself, then retreated and disappeared. A moment later, Zichen was besieged by a group of beasts and was in danger. The gourd did not activate on its own. A smile appeared at the corner of Blood Shadow's mouth. Di-Wu and Butterball left the city wall. This wasn't a place for human Soul Realm experts to stay. The other Earth Soul Realm experts were still standing there. Many of them were looking at the canyon. Unlike before, they couldn't see anything under the storm. Yao Yi stood there in a daze. In his mind, he recalled what Zichen had said earlier. It was about Shanya. At that time, he didn't hesitate at all and directly rejected her. Was he afraid of death? Or did he dislike her? What was the relationship between Zichen and Shanya? Why was she willing to risk her life to save him? Ripples appeared in his heart. The heavenly soul realm old man who had stopped Zichen earlier stood not far away. He had deliberately deduced once, but he couldn't sense anything. It seemed that this matter was very strange. This made the Blood Shadow very shocked. The other party's endurance was too good. So, he went to chase some strange beasts over. Finally, after Zichen was exhausted, he took out his scimitar. He didn't get close, but threw it far away. Moreover, it wasn't Zichen's vital part. Through the previous battle, he already had a certain understanding of the characteristics of the gourd. As long as it wasn't a fatal attack, the gourd wouldn't activate on its own. The scimitar took advantage of Zichen's unpreparedness and attacked his waist. The Blood Shadow stared straight ahead and saw the Soul Hunter's figure stagger, and the scimitar flew back. Sure enough, it hit. The light of the spirit robe on the Soul Hunter's body became dimmer. Retracting the scimitar, the Blood Shadow changed direction and attacked from the second direction. It hit again. 3 times in a row, the last bit of light on the stumbling Zichen's spirit robe extinguished. The protective effect disappeared, and it turned into an ordinary token. The Blood Shadow sneered. Next, the other party was waiting to be torn apart by the strange beasts. Suddenly, the violent spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings gathered crazily towards Zichen. His body seemed to have turned into a huge vortex, and endless energy entered his body. Just as the Blood Shadow appeared in shock, a powerful aura erupted from Zichen's body. Zichen's entire body shone, and a straight pillar of lightning tore apart the blood clouds, soaring into the sky and disappearing into the sky. On the city walls of Bloody Battle City, everyone saw a dazzling bolt of lightning pierce through the blood cloud storm, like a sword of light, and disappear into the sky of the canyon. Chapter 3978. On the city wall, there was an uproar as discussions broke out. No one knew what had happened in the canyon. Why would a bolt of lightning break through the blood clouds? The blue-robed old man seemed to know the reason, and he laughed heartily. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared. The heavenly soul old man next to him was confused. Some people guessed that the phenomenon might have been caused by Zichen, who had just entered, but they immediately dispelled this unrealistic guess. That was not a place for humans. Zichen should have died a long time ago. Blood Shadow's eyes widened as he looked ahead in shock. He knew what had happened, but he couldn't believe it. He saw Soul Hunter break through. There were many people who broke through, but it was the first time he saw such a big commotion. The aura of an Earth soul exploded out just like that. He didn't go into seclusion or cultivate, but he broke through so easily while fighting. And it was when death was about to appear. Could it be that he had stimulated his potential? But he was already an Earth soul, so how could he stimulate his potential? This was too abnormal. But the truth was right in front of him. From the moment Zichen arrived here, the dark ghost soul devouring technique had been operating on its own, absorbing the energy between heaven and earth to replenish his body. After the spirit robe's power was exhausted and the protection ended, Zichen's body was like seawater that suddenly poured in from all directions. Under normal circumstances, he would have died on the spot because he couldn't withstand the energy pressure from the canyon at all. At this moment, Zichen broke through. An Earth Soul aura was released from his body, and the energy that was about to burst his body was all absorbed. And it was far from enough. The power that had been suppressed by the rules here was released at this moment. Soul power returned. Zichen's sharp senses returned, and they were even clearer. He could sense the black soul weapon that he couldn't sense or use before. The strange beasts stopped one after another. Their bodies trembled under Zichen's powerful aura, and they didn't dare to attack at all. Yugue and Fatty also turned to look at Zichen. The two beasts were stunned. Under the envelopment of the aura of the Earth Soul stage, the pressure here was nothing to Zichen. When his sharp senses returned, he sensed Blood Shadow's location. With a flicker, Zichen disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already behind Blood Shadow with a long rod in his hand. Its quality was much higher than the boning knife. Blood Shadow seemed to have sensed the danger behind him. The scimitar in his hand quickly slashed backward. He turned around, intending to retreat and escape. At this moment, his heart was filled with fear. Not only did the other party sense his location, his speed was also extremely fast. If this was not his home ground, he would not have been able to react at all. However, even though Crimson Shadow managed to react, it would still be very difficult for him to escape from Zichen. The long staff smashed down with a whistling sound that seemed to cover up the sound of the storm around them. Bang! The high-quality saber shattered. Then, the staff smashed down and landed on the scarlet figure's chest. This scene happened too quickly, and he couldn't dodge at all. Coughing up blood, Blood Shadow landed on the ground and turned to run. At this moment, he was really scared out of his wits. This person who had just broken through to the human soul realm seemed to have become so powerful and terrifying without even familiarizing himself with the realm. Zichen looked at the fleeing figure and did not immediately give chase. With a flash of light in his hand, he put away the black soul weapon and replaced it with an unfathomable mystery. He drew a line. A ray of light blossoming with lightning appeared from the tip of the brush. It was like a ray of light that separated heaven and earth. It cut through the blood clouds and followed Blood Shadow out. Blood Shadow, who had escaped more than 300 meters away, still had lingering fear. At the same time, he was also glad that the other party did not chase after him. However, in the next moment, his expression changed drastically as he turned around. Light flashed in front of his eyes and disappeared. All the strength in his body seemed to have been sucked out, and he instantly lost control of his body. In his gradually blurring vision, the human soul who had just broken through to the human soul realm appeared with two beasts. The other party did not walk quickly, but wherever he passed, the blood clouds would avoid him. He looked at the soul hunter and opened his mouth, but before he could say a word, his vision turned black. Zichen came closer and looked at the dead soul devourer. In the past, it was extremely difficult for him to kill an earth soul, but with his breakthrough, everything was solved. He was ready to leave this place, but after taking 2 steps, he stopped. Because Yugue did not leave, and Zichen also thought of something. Sure enough, after turning over the corpse, Zichen saw a death soul stone, but it was not the same as the one he usually refined. This soul stone was flowing with blood-red light, like an impure bloodstone. After Zichen put away the death soul stone, Yugue, who had not moved, swallowed the corpse in one gulp. Fatty grinned, as if he was a little regretful. Let's go and find them. Looking at Yugue with a round belly, Zichen said. Yugue jumped onto Fatty's back and continued to guide Zichen. Zichen followed beside Fatty. The pressure here was nothing to him, and he could walk easily, so he did not ride Fatty. At the same time, Zichen could not bear to see Fatty with so many wounds on his body. After walking for a full 2 hours, the storms they encountered became stronger and stronger. Just as Zichen wondered if Yugue had found the wrong place, he finally sensed a familiar blade intent. It was Wanhee's blade intent. It's just ahead. Zichen's expression changed, and he sped up. With the shield and staff in hand, Zichen was ready for a big battle. Just as he was about to approach, Zichen saw a huge light barrier that was completely formed by saber intent. Around the light barrier, there were numerous black figures that continuously attacked the light barrier. In the blade intent light shield, Wanhee stood straight in front, while Shanya and Lan Guming stood behind him, channeling power to him. There were also 2 people lying on the ground, seemingly unconscious. At this moment, Wanhee's blade intent protection became unstable, as if it could break at any time. The situation was not good. Buzz. Zichen gathered power, and the patterns on the black staff lit up instantly. This time, it was almost completely bright, and the dazzling golden light pierced through the blood cloud. Zichun held the staff and smashed down, and a golden staff shadow appeared. The blood cloud rolled violently and was shattered by the golden staff shadow. The staff shadow moved forward and fell on the black shadows. In an instant, the sound of flesh exploding rang out, and countless blood rain fell from the sky, dyeing the blade in tint protection red. Those were not the soul-devouring clan, but some kind of exotic beast. Such a change made the three of them slightly startled, and they subconsciously turned their heads. Chapter 39-79. The two girls widened their eyes in disbelief when they saw Zichun. How could Zichun be here? Even the look in Wanhee's eyes changed slightly. The two girls cried out in alarm. This place was too dangerous. Those mutated beasts called spirit-devouring beasts didn't have strong combat strength, but they could invisibly devour everyone's soul power. Even with the three of them, Wanhee's blade will protection could not hold on much longer. Zichun did not retreat. Instead, he charged forward, ignoring the two girls' cries. He swung his golden staff in all directions. The bodies of the spirit-devouring beasts exploded, and blood rained down from the sky. As if sensing Zichun's threat, the spirit-devouring beasts turned around and charged at Zichun. In an instant, Zichun was besieged. "Quick, save him!" Shania shouted. However, before he could remove the blade will shield, the lightning began to flash in front of him. With a loud bang, a powerful wave of energy spread in all directions. The spirit-engulfing beasts surrounding Zichun were all knocked back. Then, Zichun swung his staff again. A golden arc of lightning flashed in the air. The spirit-engulfing beast's agonized shriek rang out amid a series of cracking noises. "Die!" At the same time, Zichun's eyes glinted coldly. The light from his body turned into countless arrows that flew in all directions. It was like a porcupine releasing all of its poisonous thorns. Accompanied by a dazzling light, Zichun was surrounded by a vacuum. Saber in tint protection battle. Wanhee's eyes were filled with surprise when he saw this. He broke through to the next level, Lan Guming said. Not only that, but the spirit-devouring beasts here can't do anything to him. This was the key to Zichun's strength. The spirit-devouring beast's divine powers were useless against him. In the blink of an eye, there was a pile of corpses. Zichun did not use much energy. A strange voice came from the distance. The spirit-engulfing beasts immediately scattered and disappeared without a trace. The thick smell of blood in the surroundings was quickly blown away by the storm. After the crisis was resolved, Wanhee withdrew the protection of his saber in tint, and the figures of the others appeared. Seeing that the three of them were fine, Zichun said, "Let's leave this place first." "And the other two," said Shania. They were their companions, who had fainted due to serious injuries. "Let's go." A burst of energy carried the two of them. Zichun placed them on Fatty's back and began to return. At this moment, the blood clouds in the surroundings were getting thicker and thicker. It was almost impossible to find the way back. Fortunately, the underworld ghost had this ability. "Why are you here?" Lan Guming asked. "When I heard that you were in danger, I went to the city wall and then came in," Zichun said briefly. "With your previous realm, it was impossible for you to enter. This place has extremely strict rules," Lan Guming said. "Could it be that you had already broken through when you entered?" "No." Zichun shook his head and told him about the battle order. "That's quite a coincidence." Wanhee glanced at Zichun and said, "What a coincidence, for you to encounter it." Zichun was slightly startled and seemed to be thinking about something. "Why are you trapped here?" Zichun asked doubtfully. "Aren't you very popular?" The mysteries of heaven suddenly became chaotic, and the weather changed. The storm came without warning, and we had no time to react. Wanhee said, "This should be the first anomaly to appear in 1,000 years. With that, Wanhee glanced at Zichun again. "If it weren't for you, we might have really died here." Lan Guming said sadly, "Little Blue is seriously injured and is in a deep sleep." It was the blue dragon beast. Wanhee looked at the surrounding sky. "We have to speed up. The horror of this storm is far beyond your imagination." Actually, Wanhee was very glad at this moment. If Zichun hadn't arrived in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. However, he still couldn't figure out why it turned out like this. On the way back, the few of them sped up. The storm behind them became even more terrifying, and it sounded like countless thunder roaring. According to Wan He, when they felt that something was wrong, they began to turn back. They were now at the periphery of the storm. As for the core of the storm, it was even more dangerous. When they returned, their speed was much faster than when they came. In addition, they had Yu Gui to guide them, so there wouldn't be any deviation. In less than an hour, the few of them found the entrance to return. With a flash of light, the group appeared on the city wall. At this moment, there were many people standing on the city wall, and there were even heavenly souls. The appearance of the storm today was too strange, and many people were watching from the city wall. Zichen's group attracted the attention of others as soon as they appeared. After seeing the people who returned, everyone's expressions changed, and then they were filled with disbelief. Two fairies who should have died were standing on the city wall, slim and graceful, attracting countless gazes. How is this possible? Someone exclaimed. Then, more people lost their voices. On the city wall, Yao Yi turned his head and happened to see this scene. He rubbed his eyes and felt that it was extremely inconceivable. They actually came back, and they were in perfect condition. An uproar ensued, and there were many exclamations mixed in. At the same time, several elites walked forward with smiles on their faces. The heavenly soul old man was slightly stunned. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and fell into deep thought. Someone, come and help. Wan He's voice drowned out the surrounding exclamations. Only then did everyone realize that there were two injured people on the back of the Xieji beast, and they immediately went forward to help. However, when they passed by Zichun, many of them cast sidelong glances and were extremely surprised. Why didn't a human soul die after going in? Instead, he had saved her? Could it be that everything was like what Diwu said before he left? That the success rate of saving people in the storm was actually 100%? Zichun took a step forward and blocked the others who weren't trying to save the two fairies. He looked at the elites in front and said, "Everyone, you have already made your choice. The two fairies need to rest now." Those elites were somewhat embarrassed because Zichun had asked them to save the two fairies and even said that he would let Shanya get married. At that time, no one agreed, so Zichun had no choice but to go in alone. Looking at the embarrassed elites, Shanya and Lan Gumeng were very puzzled as they didn't know what choice they had made. You are just a human soul. What right do you have to stand on the city wall? At that moment, a discordant voice was heard. It was Xin Gui, who had just arrived on the city wall. He had heard about Zichen's matter and knew that he had gone in alone. He had sneered at that time. It was fine if a fool went to court death, but he didn't expect a fool to deliver treasures. That gourd and the Xieji beast were obviously wasted. However, he didn't expect Jiang Yi to return successfully. Not only did he bring the fairies back, but he also stopped all the elites. Therefore, he couldn't help but mock Jiang Yi. Zichen glanced at Xin Gui and revealed a playful smile. What you said seems to make sense. I haven't had the time to thank my two friends. Zichen snapped his fingers, and the Xieji beast followed Zichen forward. When they passed by a stone pillar, Zichen extended his hand and patted on it. A beam of energy flashed and disappeared. The stone pillar started to emit light, and there were thunderbolts that were extremely dazzling. Zichen, who had broken through, no longer needed it. How about it? Are you willing to enter the battlefield with me? Zichen invited Butterball. Butterball hesitated. What's the point of staying here? The battlefield is where we should go, Zichen said again. Butterball nodded and said, Indeed, the battlefield is where I belong. This place is no longer suitable for me. In fact, even if you didn't come, I might not be able to stay here for too long. Zichen smiled and said, Then join my team. Butterball said, It's not impossible, but the prerequisite is that you have the strength to lead the team. The leader of the team must be the captain, and the captain must have the combat strength of the general realm. Zichen was already qualified for this. Tidy up and let's go. Zichen smiled faintly as an answer to Butterball. Butterball laughed loudly. The aura around him began to change, and he advanced from the human soul realm to the earth soul realm. It was so simple. The others around looked at Butterball in shock. This guy who had always been disliked by others actually had such a method? He could break through with just a thought? However, they had no way of asking the fatty now, because he had already left with Zichen after breaking through to the next level. The two people who were disliked the most left just like that. After walking out of the operation room, Diwu walked out. Zichen looked back at him and thanked him. Then, he threw the gourd to him. Maybe there will be others who need it in the future. Diwu took it and nodded his head slightly as a parting greeting. On the same day, Zichen and Butterball entered the inner city. The storm in the canyon wasn't over yet, and it was even more powerful. Zichen was very surprised, but at the same time, he was very glad. When he entered previously, he really didn't know that the storm was so dangerous. It was said that the death storm would last for a few more days. He wasn't injured, but he had consumed too much energy. After Zichen entered the inner city, he went to look for He. Now, he could move freely in the inner city. Butterball had to settle some matters in the outer city, such as getting some daily necessities. While chatting with He, Zichen took out the Bloody Death Soul Stone and asked He to take a look. This is the Blood Shadow clan of the Soul Devourer clan. Seeing the Death Soul Stone in Zichen's hand, He's expression changed. Where did you get it? Zichen told him what happened in the storm, then asked in confusion, why can the Soul Devourer clan hide in the storm? He was surprised when he heard Zichen's words. He passed the blood-colored soul stone to Zichen and patted him hard on the shoulder. You're really lucky, kid. For a human soul realm cultivator to be able to survive the Blood Shadow clan in the storm is definitely unprecedented. He stood up and looked out of the window. The Blood Shadow clan is a very special clan in the Soul Devourer clan. Their combat power isn't strong. They can't even compare to a soldier from our side. However, their strength lies in the storm. In that place, they are the kings and no one can defeat them. You saw the Soul Devourer beasts that almost killed us, but they couldn't do anything to the Blood Shadow clan. In the storm, the Blood Shadow clan senses and combat power increase by several times. Turning back to look at Zichen, He smiled. You're already very lucky that you didn't die. You even killed a Blood Shadow clan member in the storm. This can be considered a miracle. The smile on He's face suddenly disappeared, and he changed the topic. However, even the Blood Shadow clan doesn't dare to stay in the storm for too long. In this kind of weather, they won't be able to return alive. What's in the storm? Zichen asked. Danger. Endless danger. He said helplessly. If you want to know the details, I'm sorry, I don't know. Those who know are probably dead. However, there's a legend about the storm. It says that the core of the storm is actually a world. Every time the storm appears, it means that the door to that world has opened. The door to a world? Zichen was shocked when he heard this. He thought of the way out. Back then, the Mountain Lord of St. Talisman said that he had never found the way back. Could it be that the way was in the storm? The way back was the core of the storm? Chapter 3981. Zichen's state of mind changed because he felt that he might have found the way back. Perhaps the exit that had never appeared was at the core of the death storm. But this was very difficult. After all, that was a place that even heavenly souls did not dare to step into. When he turned to look at Zichen and said, the storm should last for a few more days. You should familiarize yourself with the rules of the battlefield. After the storm is over, you can lead a team to train inside. Lead a team to train? Zichen asked doubtfully. Aren't you the team leader? Why don't I join your team? Furthermore, I've helped you recruit a capable assistant. He smiled and said, there's no need. It's enough that I can protect you all the way. You can walk the rest of the journey yourselves. Zichen understood the meaning behind He's words, and his expression could not help but change. I can see that the three of you are very extraordinary, especially you, a descender. I'm satisfied that I can protect you all for a while. He looked at the sky outside the window. The sky is high, and this canyon battlefield will be your starting point. Do your best. He waved his sleeves and began to chase them away. Zichen clasped his fists and left. He was very grateful to He, and also very much admired He's battle prowess. However, Zichen had always been invincible. Now that he had reached the earthly soul realm, he could naturally suppress those of the same level. In fact, he already knew this. Not to mention the others, just Shanya and Lan Gumeng were two examples. Their innate talents were unbelievably high, and their combat strength was even more unrivaled. If they had not restrained themselves, they would have already caused a commotion. This time, Zichen had broken through, and the three of them had formed a new team. It would definitely be the strongest Earth Soul team here. Furthermore, the two of them could only use their full strength without worry when they were beside Zichen. The canyon battlefield was unusual. If they held back too often, they might fail miserably one day. After leaving Wan He's residence, Zichen inquired about the residences of Shanya and Lan Gumeng. Almost everyone in the inner city knew about this. After telling Zichen, he looked at Zichen strangely as he left. When he discovered that the other party had indeed gone to look for the fairy, the Earth's Soul Realm expert sneered. That was because there had been a few elites who had gone to look for the fairy, but they had all been blocked outside the door, let alone this nameless pawn. However, after Zichen left, the Earth's Soul Realm cultivator suddenly realized that something was amiss. Could it be that there was someone in the inner city who didn't know where the two fairies lived? Could he be Zichen? The Earth Soul suddenly came to a realization and immediately walked forward, wanting to see what was going on. In the end, he saw the two fairies appear of their own accord and welcome them inside. It really is him. As a human soul, he entered the Death Canyon with a battle order to save people. Not only did he come back alive, he even broke through to the next realm. The Earth Soul Realm expert was extremely shocked. The news about Zichen had already spread. It was said that the other party had even pointed at the Heavenly Soul Realm and cursed him. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance to see it. However, he had seen the scene today with his own eyes, so naturally, the news had spread. As expected, the two fairies' attitudes towards Zichen were clearly different. In the room, Zichen first asked about the condition of the two's injuries. Clearly, they were fine. Next, Zichen invited the two to join his team. The two girls were very surprised. They also thought that even if Zichen had a general-level force, he would still stay with Wan He. Zichen told them about Wan He's idea, and the two girls fell silent. Before coming, I already brought someone here. His name is Butterball. That haxy beast you saw is his. Butterball hadn't arrived yet, so Zichen took the initiative to introduce the two girls. After leaving Lan Gumeng's room, Zichen noticed a figure flashing around the corner of the street. After thinking for a moment, he knew what had happened. Just as he walked to the entrance of an alley, a person appeared and blocked Zichen's way. Looking at the person blocking his way, Zichen said indifferently, "Why are you always haunting me? What, are you tired of living? Fighting is not allowed here. Is it not allowed in the canyon?" The person who had come was Shungue. Hearing Zichen's threat, his expression didn't change much. He said indifferently, "I came today to kindly remind you of something." Zichen waved his hand and said, "I've already received your kindness. You can get lost now." "Humph." Shungue snorted coldly and said, "The implications of this matter are too great. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't take the initiative to invite trouble. Whether it's Fairy Shanya or Fairy Lan, they're not people you can touch. If you know what's good for you, you'd better leave quickly." Zichen suddenly stopped and turned back to look at Shungue. He said, "Did those elites send you here? Go back and tell them now. What right do cowardly rats like them have to admire the two fairies?" "This is different. You're changing the concept," Shungue said. "How is it different? Will I die?" Zichen smiled disdainfully. "Then why am I still alive? Oh, and while you're at it, do me a favor. Tell them that I, Zichen, am going to form another team, and the two fairies will join. From now on, we will advance and retreat together." With that, Zichen left, leaving behind a shocked Shungue. This news was a little too big. Shungue brought the news back. Yaoye's expression was a little cold. How could this be? What is the relationship between Zichen and the two fairies? Butterball packed up and came to the inner city. His residence had already been arranged, but the human souls in charge of his daily life couldn't help but look at Butterball strangely. Zichen's residence was next door to Butterball's. An old man came to Zichen's door. It was the heavenly soul who had taken away his general token. I have offended you before. I hope you can forgive me. Zichun hurriedly apologized. You're quite courageous. I'll return this to you. Right now, you have the qualifications and strength to gain its recognition. The old man looked at Zichun and said, however, if you want to form a team, you need at least 5 people. The heavenly soul old man thanked Zichun for his invitation and left without entering. At that moment, Butterball just happened to walk out of the door and heard the old man's words. 5 people. Looks like we have to find 3 more, Butterball said as he walked over. Not 3, but 1, Zichun said. Shanya and Longu Ming will join us. When Butterball heard this, his eyes lit up. Clearly, he didn't expect such a good thing to happen. He gave Zichun a thumbs up, looking very impressed. But right now, we're still missing 1 person, Zichun said. Do you have a suitable candidate? Butterball thought for a moment and said, there is one, but I don't know if he can come in now. The old man opened his eyes and said, little brat, the time has come. Hurry up and enter Bloody Battle City. A young man was grabbed by a large hand of energy and thrown into Bloody Battle City. Even heavenly souls had almost no chance of survival if they encountered it. This kind of strange beast had always been a legend. No one had encountered it until now. It was said that in the core area, there was something even more terrifying. However, no one knew what level it was exactly. In short, there was only one thing. Entering the canyon meant death. After seeing the label, Zichun suddenly sympathized with the elites. After all, he had given them a difficult problem and made them make such a choice. It was obviously a little difficult. However, even though he knew that it was full of danger and death, Zichun still wanted to save people in the same situation. Apart from that, Zichun was also concerned about contribution points. That was what he wanted the most when he entered the battlefield. He didn't feel much about the hatred between the Soul Hunter clan and the Spirit Devouring clan. After all, when they first came to Kata, they relied on hunting spirit-devouring beasts to survive. Now, his only thought was to accumulate enough contribution points and then go to the mysterious Sky City to exchange for the spirit-devouring technique. Then, he would leave and go home. Ever since he was intimidated last time, Yunjian had become much more obedient. He was also very serious when he was learning. The more they knew about the canyon, the greater the respect in their hearts. They didn't dare to be careless. After 5 days, the storm finally came to an end. It came quickly and left quickly. This made Zichun wonder if someone had stepped into the passage and then closed the door. Or maybe it disappeared on its own because it didn't see anyone leaving and was waiting for the next opening. On this day, Zichun walked out of his room and saw Shingue leaving Butterball's residence. He couldn't help but frown. This guy was really haunting him. However, after seeing him, Shingue left quickly. Not long after, Butterball walked out of the room. Zichun asked, he came to find trouble with you? Butterball said indifferently, no, he just wants me to change teams. Zichun looked at Butterball. You agreed? How is that possible? The opportunity to get close to the fairy is right in front of him. Which fool would give it up? Butterball said immediately. According to Butterball's character, Zichun obviously didn't believe it. Don't worry. I'm no longer the old Butterball Rue. Butterball said righteously. I know. You are Butterball. Zichun smiled and was relieved. But then, Zichun asked, that guy won't give up. Will he look for Yunjian? Butterball said firmly, if he dares to look for Yunjian, Yunjian will definitely beat him until his mother can't recognize him. Zichun said doubtfully, aren't we not allowed to fight here? Butterball said sarcastically, it's a metaphor. Do you understand metaphors? Zichun gave Butterball a chestnut and then turned to leave. He was in a good mood. It seemed that both Butterball and Yunjian had extraordinary identities. Otherwise, they wouldn't have looked down on an outstanding talent. The storm disappeared and Zichun's team was officially established. On the day of the establishment, Zichun planned to take the team out. The old man waved his hand and said, since he doesn't want you to join, it means that you're not fated. If you're unwilling, then go and prove yourself. On this battlefield, the only way to prove yourself is through battle achievements. Only by obtaining the recognition of the gate of the sky can you be considered a true powerhouse. Yes, I've learned my lesson. When Yao Yi raised his head again, his eyes had regained their clarity. An unyielding will appeared. At this moment, Yao Yi was like an unsheathed sword, showing off its sharpness. The old man waved his hand. You can scram now. Looking at Yao Yi's back, the old man felt gratified and a little emotional. Yao Yi could only defeat his inner demons because of his attention and guidance. Those who couldn't be taught in time or weren't noticed in advance could only be obliterated once they were discovered. In the Canyon of Death, there were no families or surnames. There was only one kind of people, and that was the soul hunters. Those who dared to cheat or scheme against their comrades would only have one outcome: obliteration. When Zichen stood on the city wall, he immediately became the center of attention because of his position. He was at the head of the five-man team. Shanya and Long Gu Meng were behind him, while Butterball and Yunzhan stood on both sides of the two girls. The four of them stood side by side. The Xieji beast followed behind Butterball. Zichen's position was originally Captain Wan He's. Zichen took a deep breath, looked at the canyon in front of him, and said, "It's time to go." Suddenly, footsteps sounded. Another team appeared. The leader was Yao Yi, and behind him were more than 10 people. Different from before, Yao Yi was in high spirits now. He was especially radiant. Zichen could feel this difference, and so could the others. If Yao Yi was gloomy before, like a rainy day, then now he was like a clear sky after the rain, with a rainbow hanging high in the sky. He had a different style. "Zichen, do you dare to compete with me?" Yao Yi looked at Zichen, his whole body glowing. "What are we competing for?" Zichen asked. "Let's see who can open the gate of the sky first." Yao Yi said, "Don't worry, I won't take advantage of you. The gate of the sky opened for me 5 days ago. I'll allow you to be 5 days later than me next time." Zichen said, "Forget about the competition, but the current you is much more pleasing to the eye than before." Then, Zichen looked at the people behind him and said, "I hope you all come back alive." After that, Zichen entered the passage. Shanya and Long Gu Meng followed closely behind, and finally Yunzhan and Butterball. "Oomph." Seeing Zichen leave, Yao Yi snorted. "Even if you don't compete, time is still there. If you're 5 days later than me when the gate of the sky opens next time, then you're not as good as me." After saying that, Yao Yi smiled contentedly and said, "Let's go to the battlefield and fight for contribution." Before entering, Yao Yi suddenly said, "But life is first. Only by living can one continue to fight." After entering the canyon, the pressure here could no longer affect Zichen, and at the same time, because the storm had disappeared, the entire Scarlet Canyon was very clean. It was as if all the corpses and bloodstains had been washed away by the storm. Zichen remembered Wan He's words. When the canyon was filled with bones, it would be the end of the battle. Looking at the current situation, it was impossible to fill the canyon. Their feet touched the ground several times, and they fell from the mountain peak. The mountain rocks rolled, and more than 10 clouds of dust flew up. Each cloud of dust represented a member of the soul-devouring clan. Zichen's lips curled into a smile when he saw the soul-devouring clan filled with murderous intent. "Looks like my luck is not bad." A light flashed in his hand, and the long rod appeared in his hand. Long Gu Meng and Shanya both took out their soul weapons. The light of power began to rise. Butterball gently patted the Xieji beast's head, indicating that it should follow him. Yunzhan's vibration force began to be activated. Ripples surged out. "Each of you, one direction." Zichen laughed heartily and flew straight ahead. His target was the person who seemed to be the leader of the group. The other 4 people rushed in different directions. "You are courting death." When the leader of the soul-devouring clan saw Zichen rushing forward, a cold light flashed in his eyes. A weapon also appeared in his hand. He shouted, "You go and deal with the others. Be careful not to hurt the Xieji beast." Zichen smiled. It seemed that the leader of the soul-devouring clan had come for the Xieji beast. However, it made sense. Even in the canyon, it was extremely rare. It was amazing to be able to tame it. The runes on the long rod lit up one after another. The originally black long rod turned golden. The golden light shone, and a strong aura burst out from the long rod. The weapon in front of the leader of the soul-devouring clan had a strong aura as well. The two of them came into contact. With a loud bang, a strong shockwave blew sand and stones away. The two of them retreated, their robes flapping. Zichun took 3 steps back. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He continued to move forward. This time, the power of the long rod was much stronger. The original golden light was now mixed with a few more thunderbolts, making it even more violent. The leader of the soul-devouring clan was surprised. The strength of the opponent was far beyond his expectations. However, he was not afraid. He had killed more than one powerful soul hunter. Moreover, when the two of them met, they would fight to the death. When the two of them came into contact for the second time, it was as if a thunderclap suddenly exploded in the canyon. The ground shook, and violent energy spread out. Opposite Zichun, the leader of the soul-devouring clan was sent flying. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His face was full of shock. This seemingly nameless pawn had used absolute strength to suppress him. How was this possible? Even if he encountered an elite, he was confident that he could withstand a few moves. Your strength is not bad. Let's go again. Zichun laughed. The two of them came into contact for the third time. The leader of the soul-devouring clan coughed up blood and was sent flying. He was seriously injured. Looking at the opponent who had not yet landed, Zichun's figure immediately disappeared. In the next moment, he appeared in front of the leader of the soul-devouring clan as if he had teleported. The long rod in his hand slammed down. Terrifying power poured into the body of the soul-devouring clan's leader. The leader's face was filled with shock as he completely extinguished the opponent's life force. Chapter 3985. In just 4 moves, the leader of the Soul Eater clan died on the spot. He didn't even have the chance to activate his Soul Eater superpower. The other members of the Soul Eater clan looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. They all wanted to retreat. Unexpectedly, a small black beast suddenly appeared behind one of the Soul Eater clan members and opened its mouth. As if a black hole had opened, the Soul Eater clan member felt a devouring force fall on him. In the next moment, the Soul Eater clan member was devoured by the ghost. At the same time, in another direction, the blue dragon beast attacked. The power of time and space appeared alternately. A blue light flashed and pierced through the body of a Soul Eater clan member. The soul weapon in Shan Yu's hand seemed to contain the power to break all techniques. Everywhere it passed, all attacks disappeared. A member of the Soul Eater clan fell in front of her. Yun Jun used the soul-shaking spell. Everyone who tried to get close to him would be knocked back by a vibration force. No one could get close to him. Butterball's combat power was also very good. At the same time, he was also taking care of the Xieji beast. In this battle, no one would be able to escape. Zichun's figure kept changing, killing the members of the Soul Eater clan who tried to escape. At this time, the black was still floating in the air above them, motionless. More than 10 miles away, another Soul Eater clan team appeared. There were 9 people in the team, and the leader was a young man. He walked at the front, and 8 people followed behind him at a moderate pace. You are too slow. The young man looked back at the 8 people with a hint of dissatisfaction in his eyes. Young master, it's not that we are slow. It's that you are too fast, a tall Soul Eater clan member said. The enemy has already appeared. How can I not earn some merits? The young man said in a deep voice, the door of darkness hasn't been opened for a long time. Maybe this time, I can fight for the identity of the Son of Darkness. The Son of Darkness? Only one is born every 1,000 years. He is the strongest of the strong, the genius of the geniuses. However, with young master's talent, you can compete with them. It is said that after becoming the Son of Darkness, the door to the last level of the Door of Darkness will open. The secret to becoming the God of Darkness lies inside. Since you know about this rumor, you should understand that the young master doesn't have much time left. If he doesn't try to kill a soul hunter, he won't be able to compete with those guys. The youth cupped his fists towards the sky. God of Darkness, I hope that my devil forest can meet one of the top 10 soul hunters. That way, I can earn a lot of contribution points. All of a sudden, a strange sound was heard. This sound could only be heard by the soul-devouring clan. It was some kind of signal. After hearing the content of the voice, Emo Lin's expression changed slightly. The others immediately stopped and became alert. Lanmi is dead? Interesting. Emo Lin looked up at the sky and said, could it be that the god of darkness really opened his eyes and brought me one of the 10 elites? Young master, Lanmi is not weak. Even if she can't win against one of the top 10 soul hunters, she can still escape. The tall soul hunter from before stepped forward and said in a deep voice, but he's dead. The person who came is definitely not to be underestimated. Emo Lin smiled faintly and said, so what? Who am I? I'm Emo Lin. Even if the person who came is one of the top 10 elites, I'll still kill him. Emo Lin patted his chest. Don't forget who I am and where I came from. At this moment, Emo Lin was filled with powerful and absolute confidence. The tall man immediately retreated, but there was still some worry in his eyes. Everyone, speed up. Emo Lin was the first to turn into a ray of light and chase after them. The tall man behind him paused for a moment, then said to the 7 people behind him via voice transmission, if anything happens, protect the young master with your life. Yes. The 7 of them replied in unison, then turned into streams of light and moved forward. Zichen killed 4 people and obtained 4 Death Soul Stones. According to Shanya, this was a big harvest. This was because when the 2 of them came to hunt for the first time, they had only obtained 1 Death Soul Stone each. After all, those who could come here were all experts. Whether it was the Soul Hunters or the Soul-Devouring clan, they were all extraordinary. It was a pity that they had encountered Zichen's special team this time, so they were completely annihilated. Everyone was very satisfied with their current harvest. After this battle, whether it was Butterball or Yunjun, they were very impressed with Zichen's combat strength. At the same time, they knew that the 2 fairies were definitely not just for show. Should we go back or continue? Zichen turned around and looked at the few of them. In fact, they had just entered this place, so there was no need to return so early. After all, it was their first hunt, and their harvest was huge. It was always right to be careful. Shanya said, let's go back. We'll come back after we've refined the Death Soul Stones. Butterball and Yunjin nodded in agreement. Lan Guming naturally had no objections. Their expressions changed. Zichen turned around and said, it seems that someone doesn't want us to go back so early. Zichen saw billowing smoke and dust, like thousands of soldiers and horses galloping. He narrowed his eyes slightly. From the fluctuations in front of him, he sensed that an interesting opponent had arrived. As expected of the Death Canyon, the soul-devouring clan members who came here were all extraordinary. The previous leader's combat strength was extraordinary. He did not expect the second team to appear, and he felt a little threatened. It seems to be someone who is not weaker than the 10 heroes. Lan Guming and Shanya quickly went forward and came to the left and right sides of Zichun. A person appeared in front of the smoke and dust. It was a very young soul-devouring clan member, wearing a black robe. The black robe reflected light, and the light of power surged. At this moment, the young man's face was filled with excitement. He flew forward quickly, not caring about the consumption of power. However, when he got closer, the smile on his face froze, and his initial excitement dissipated. Because he did not recognize this person, he looked at the corpse on the ground, and his eyes wandered over it. He did see Lanmi. Lanmi was dead, but the 10 heroes were not here. This made him very disappointed. Therefore, he said to Zichun, hey, tell me where the 10 heroes who killed Lanmi went, and I'll leave your corpses intact. Zichun was slightly stunned, but he quickly understood what the young man meant. Obviously, the young man had rushed over excitedly because he had determined that one of the 10 heroes was here. As for Lanmi, he should be the leader who had died earlier. Could it be that only the 10 heroes could kill him? Although Zichen understood what the young man meant, he did not understand how the young man knew that Lanmi was dead, and how he found this place. Suddenly, he thought of a possibility. He looked at the young man and said, Royal Soul-Devouring Demon Clan? Then, he looked up at the sky and saw a black dot. It was a spiritual demon eagle, which only the royal family of the Soul-Devouring clan could possess. Looks like I'm lucky to have met a big fish. Zichun smiled. Chapter 3986. As long as one reached the Earth's soul realm, one could enter the canyon battlefield to kill enemies. During this period, one could obtain merits by killing enemies. However, there was no specific amount, nor was there a token to display the exact number. Instead, it was calculated by the world itself. Zichun did not know whether it was the rules or some other method of calculation. The others did not understand either. In short, as long as one obtained victory, one would naturally obtain merits. Once one's merits reached a certain amount, the gate of heaven would naturally open. Then, one could enter and obtain what they wanted. During this period, the amount of merits was directly related to the opponent's strength. For example, if the Soul Eater clan killed one of the top 10, they would obtain a large amount of merits. Similarly, if the Soul Hunters killed a powerful Soul Eater clan member, they would obtain a large amount of merits. The Soul Eater clan was divided into different clans, and the Royal clan was a noble existence. Once they were killed, they would obtain a lot of merits. It was almost no less than a Soul Hunter's top 10. Hearing Zichun's words, Emo Lin also laughed. Although you're not an elite, as long as your combat strength is comparable to an elite, my gains will not be small. He pointed at Zichun and said, I, Emo Lin, have just entered the battlefield. Today, I'll start with you. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure dissipated like a puff of smoke. Zichun sneered and took a step forward. The rocky ground began to shake, and several cracks extended from under his feet. He punched out, and lightning curled around his fist. Just as his fist landed, Emo Lin's figure appeared, and he also punched out. The two fists collided. With a loud bang, countless smoke and dust flew up, and the two figures retreated. It's said that the royal clan's strength is very strong. Today, I've seen it with my own eyes. Zichun's smile did not diminish. It's normal to exchange blows. He quickly rushed forward like a straight beam of light, charging towards Emo Lin. The second time their fists collided, and even more berserk strength surged out. As Emo Lin retreated once more, a strange light flashed in his eyes. It's said that you soul hunters have weak bodies, but it seems that you are an exception. Just based on this point alone, you have the qualifications to be called an elite. Changing the topic, Emo Lin coldly said, but just because of this, you deserve to die even more. I really need your contributions. The soul power on Emo Lin's body seemed to be boiling. It kept churning as a powerful aura surged out. The group of soul-devouring clansmen behind him all backed away. Since this person was not the prodigy mentioned in the report, they were relieved. At the same time, their eyes were filled with pity. This was because this person, who was clearly no weaker than a prodigy, had actually encountered the young master. He could only consider himself unlucky. Just as Emo Lin was getting serious, Zichun waved his hand. However, he did not ask the four of them to retreat. Instead, he planned to not let any of them off. The four of them began to move. They spread out and headed for the Soul Eater clan on both sides. Yugue lay on Shan Yu's shoulder and stared at the enemy. Again, Zichun laughed and flew forward. The power on his fist had the power of vibration. As if he had sensed this strange energy, Yun Zhan cast his gaze over and fell into deep thought. The third encounter. At the moment when the energy collided, Zichun's figure flashed and dissolved the power of vibration that came from the front. He flashed to the other side of Emo Lin and threw out another punch. Emo Lin's reaction was also extremely fast. Just as Zichun's punch landed, he quickly threw out a palm and slapped it on Zichun's shoulder. The two of them were hit once each. Neither of them gained the slightest advantage. However, they did not suffer any damage. This was because Zichun's body lit up. The spiritual robe dissolved the power of the punch. The black robe on his opponent's body also dissolved most of the power of vibration. Zichun's figure did not stop. The third punch landed. Then, it was another elbow strike. This was a combat technique. After Zichun advanced to the Earth Soul Realm, he displayed it again. His attack power had become even stronger. Emo Lin's attainments in the physical body were obviously very impressive. At this moment, as Zichun displayed his combat technique, he was still able to keep up with Zichen's pace, speed, and attack. In the eyes of outsiders, the two of them were like two rays of light that kept colliding. During this time, they did not defend at all. They relied on their spiritual robes to withstand each other's attacks and then tried to deliver a fatal blow to each other. Yunjun's attention seemed to be completely attracted by Zichen. Among the crowd, it seemed that he was the only one who could sense the difference in Zichen's power. That kind of power seemed to have the same effect as his soul shock incantation. His soul shock art was only at the entry level and had not been fully mastered. According to his master's original intention, he could only enter Bloody Battle City after he had fully mastered it. But for some reason, his master suddenly changed his mind and threw him in just like that. Do it. At this moment, Zichen's voice suddenly rang out. Shanya and Longu Meng, who were already prepared, made their moves. The blue dragon beast quietly revealed its head and waved at the tall man. A strange power fell on the tall man's body. At the same time, there was a restrictive power. The tall man's expression changed greatly. He instantly burst out with all his strength. A terrifying fluctuation directly destroyed the restrictive power. At this moment, Lan Gu Ming's soul weapon pierced through his body. Although his heart was pierced, the tall man did not die on the spot. Instead, he coldly stared at Lan Gu. His eyes contained boundless killing intent. Die. He held the soul weapon in his hand and charged forward. His vitality was extremely strong. A strange look appeared in Lan Gu Ming's eyes. She did not expect the tall man to still be alive. However, she was not afraid at all. Blue light circulated around her body, and a pair of illusory light wings seemed to appear behind her. The tall man rushed forward and crashed into Lan Gu Ming's body. Lan Gu Ming's body was like porcelain and directly shattered. The tall man rushed past her. His body stopped a few feet away. There was a thin sword wound between his eyebrows. Blood dripped down from the wound. Lan Gu Ming appeared on the other side. Her beautiful face was pale. Life and death were determined in an instant. However, she had consumed a lot of energy and even suffered some light injuries. The opponent was more difficult to deal with and stronger than he had imagined. On the other side, Shanya, who had used her soul weapon, also fought a life and death battle with a member of the Soul Devourer clan. Other than Imo Lin, the second strongest person in the team was killed in an instant. This made Imo Lin, who was fighting, change his expression. You dare to be distracted in this situation. You are quite bold. Zichen's voice rang out. Then, a loud bang sounded. A powerful fluctuation spread out and Imo Lin's body flew backward. Zichen, who was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, looked at Imo Lin, who was flying backward. He smiled and said, "Explode?" Chapter 3987. The situation of the battle changed too quickly, so quickly that it exceeded everyone's expectations. No one on the Soul Eater clan side had expected that the tall man would be defeated and killed in an instant. After all, the other party was able to follow Imo Lin and the royal clan, so his combat strength was extremely strong. Who would have thought that he would be killed by a female soul hunter? This had already shocked them. Who would have thought that Imo Lin would be defeated and spit out blood? One of the Soul Eater clan members turned around and saw Imo Lin fall to the ground. Not only was he spitting out blood, but his other 6 orifices were also bleeding. Moreover, his aura was very chaotic, as if he had been severely injured. "Protect the young master." The other party roared and turned around to stare at Zichen, his eyes filled with the will to die. In the next moment, the soul power on his body seemed to burn, blocking Zichen's path. Looking at the other party's determined expression, Zichen was a little moved, but he did not hold back. Both sides had different standpoints, and coming here was a life and death struggle. Zichen's staff fell, and with a bang, he sent the other party flying. However, the second Soul Eater clan member blocked in front of him, clearly determined to stop Zichen. Zichen could only continue to attack. In the distance, Imo Lin staggered to his feet. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices, and his expression was extremely ugly. He did not expect to meet a tough opponent on his first time on the battlefield. The other party was clearly not one of the 10 talents, so why was he so powerful? He looked down at the black robe on his body. There was no damage, but how did he get injured? His blood and chi were churning. His injuries were not very serious, at least not as serious as he had imagined. However, just as he was about to fight with Zichen again, he realized that his side had lost nearly half of its people. One had to know that the people he brought were all experts. He did not expect that the casualties would be so high in such a short period of time. Count yourself lucky. Next time, I will definitely not let you go. At this moment, Imo Lin's subordinates were still launching suicidal attacks at Zichun without fear of death. After leaving behind a ruthless sentence, Imo Lin turned around and left. After Zichun sent a member of the Soul Eater clan flying, the golden staff in his hand flew forward like a straight golden battle spear, heading straight for Imo Lin's back. Imo Lin turned around and roared angrily. Countless streams of soul-devouring power gushed out, blocking the front and stopping the staff from moving forward. Boom! The soul-devouring power exploded, and Imo Lin was sent flying backwards. As the golden light faded away, the staff returned. Looking at the fleeing demonic forest, Zichun stepped forwards and the ground began to shake. A light flashed in his hand, and a mysterious light appeared. If you can escape from me today, then my name is Zichun. Shameless. Before he finished drawing, Zichun coldly shouted. This was because a large hand had appeared in the sky and directly grabbed Imo Lin, bringing him into the distance. Based on his perception, he naturally knew that the one who had attacked was a heavenly soul, an existence that should not have appeared here. The giant hand disappeared with the demonic forest. Zichun stood alone with the brush in his hand, his expression fluctuating. He did not expect that such a situation would occur on a battlefield of such a level. If this was not cheating, then what was? He turned his head and looked around. If a heavenly soul had appeared on the soul hunter's side and stopped them slightly, then Imo Lin, who was escaping, would definitely have died here. Unfortunately, no heavenly soul appeared on his side. When Zichun turned his head back unwillingly, the battle had already ended. Other than Imo Lin, who had escaped, the 8 people he had brought with him had all died in battle. What an unlucky year. Let's go back. Zichun waved his hand as if to dispel the bad luck on his body. They quickly cleaned up the battlefield and then returned the way they had come. During this time, Butterball and Yunzhan did not say a word. Through this battle, they also knew that Longumeng and Shanya not only had fairy-like appearances, but they also had fairy-like combat strength. At the same time, they also had a deeper understanding of Zichun's combat strength. 1 word. Strong. 2 words. Powerful. It should be known that both Butterball and Yunzhan were very impressive. However, in front of Zichun and the other 2, the 2 of them still felt pressured. However, this was not a bad thing, but a good thing. As the saying goes, with pressure comes motivation. Fatty, how do you feel? Butterball looked at Fatty at the side and said with a smile, Do you feel proud in such a team? Of course, Fatty would not reply. Butterball, who was in a good mood, threw a death soul stone and said, This is for you. You have to become stronger quickly. Otherwise, I won't be able to bring you out in the future. Just as Zichun and the others left the battlefield, a ray of light descended from the sky and landed in the one-line sky. It was an old man. If Zichun was present, he would be able to recognize this old man. It was the one who had stopped him from entering the canyon. The old man looked up at the sky and said with a smile, Why? You've already been shameless once. Do you want to lose face again? No one responded in the dark, but the sky was already filled with dark clouds. The old man smiled and said, Oh, you really dare to come? His body lit up, and a tyrannical aura surged out. It was as if the light had pierced through the darkness, causing the dark clouds to be unable to advance any further. Zichun and the others, who had already walked a long way, suddenly felt a terrifying pressure coming from behind. They looked back, and it seemed as if the air was filled with a powerful pressure. This caused everyone's hearts to tighten. Zichun, who felt that something was wrong, said, It's not good to fight again today. Let's go back and drink. They sped up because the pressure behind them was getting stronger and stronger. The dark clouds in the sky began to move forward slowly, trying to break through the dazzling light. The old man stood on the ground, but his figure was incomparably majestic. He emitted endless light, preventing the corrosion of all the darkness in the world. This stalemate lasted for a long time. The dark clouds did not give an inch until a light breeze appeared in the air. The moment the inconspicuous light breeze appeared, the dark clouds suddenly began to retreat, and then disappeared in the blink of an eye. A second heavenly soul old man walked out from the light breeze. "What happened?" the old man asked. The heavenly soul, who had always represented light, retracted all the light on his body. He did not immediately respond, as if he was thinking about something. Could it be that her identity has been exposed? The old man's expression changed. The heavenly soul shook his head and said, "No." The old man asked, "No? Then why did the Soul Devourer clan act as if they had gone crazy? Why did they ignore the rules and attack?" The heavenly soul said, "It's Zichun. That kid almost killed a member of the royal family. In the end, a heavenly soul saved him. He seemed to feel the threat of Zichun and wanted to kill him to silence him. That's when I appeared." Old man Xingfeng was startled when he heard the name. "Zichun? That daring little kid?" "Yes, that's him. That's good. As long as she's not exposed, it's fine. She's our future." Hearing the old man's words, the heavenly soul had a different opinion. As the guardian today, he had seen Zichun attack with his own eyes. He had just entered the Earth Soul stage, but his combat power was not weaker than the 10 heroes. Perhaps he was really the old friend that the old man had mentioned. He was destined to be an extraordinary existence in the future. How can he be an ordinary person? Enxiang said, "Our people have carefully investigated Zichun. His only feat is that when he was in the human soul realm, he entered a storm. He was very lucky and didn't die on the spot. He even broke through to the next realm. This is his only feat so far. Oh, there is another news. It is said that there are 2 beautiful soul hunters in his team. He has a good relationship with them. That's all." Imo Lang shook his head and said, "I have seen Zichun before. His combat power is very strong. I don't believe that he is a nameless person." Enxiang laughed. "But that is the truth. He has been in the battlefield for 4 months, but he has not done anything spectacular. His combat power can't even be compared to the 10 heroes. He has not gained the favor of any heavenly soul and has not been accepted as a disciple. Even the gates of the sky have not been opened for him." Enxiang took out a piece of information sealed in a jade slip and said, "The information is here. If you don't believe me, you can take a look." He pushed the information across the smooth table. "Imo Lang, I think you are too serious. The royal family has only lost once. It is not a big deal. To us, victory and defeat are common." Imo Lang frowned and said, "Are you saying that I do not want to admit the royal family's failure and am deliberately making a big fuss?" "I did not say that," Enxiang said. "How dare you? Do you think that the royal family is a sore loser? Zichun is indeed extraordinary. If we do not get rid of him now, he will definitely be a great threat to the spirit devourer race in the future." Seeing that Imo Lang was angry, the heavenly souls who had been silent all this time stepped out to mediate the situation. Imo Lang sat down again and looked at the information. His expression became uglier and uglier. In the end, he slammed the information on the table. "Trash. You are really trash. I can't even find out any information." This time, it was Enxiang's turn to be uglier. After all, he had nurtured those intelligence personnel. Calling them trash was the same as calling him trash. "I am going to use my authority and gather the spirit devourer race to kill Zichun," Imo Lang said in a deep voice. When the people around him heard this, their expressions changed. A heavenly soul who had been the peacemaker earlier said in shock, "Imo Lang, are you serious?" Every heavenly soul had one chance to use their authority. Usually, a heavenly soul would use this authority to deal with a great enemy of the same realm. During this period of time, the spirit devourer race would do their best to help, including all information and combat power support. However, once they used their authority, they would no longer have the authority to use it on the battlefield. This time, Imo Lang was going to use such an important opportunity on an earthly soul. This was one of a kind. "That's right. I am going to use this opportunity," Imo Lang said in a deep voice. "If this opportunity of mine can help the spirit devourer race get rid of a great threat in the future, everything will be worth it." The others still found it hard to believe. Lang stood up and said, I have made up my mind. You can decide what to do next. I want him to die. He must die. Lang left. There was no room for negotiation. The few of them felt helpless, but they could only do as they were told. At the same time, they rejoiced in their hearts. This was because they were only dealing with an earthly soul and not a heavenly soul. This made things much easier. Chapter 3989. The black staff turned into a stream of light and returned to Zichen's hand. Dozens of feet away, a soul devourer who was about to escape fell to the ground, motionless. Yunjin looked up at the sky and sneered, How dare you come again? A ray of white light soared into the sky like an arrow and shot towards the black dot. It was Yunjin's pet beast. On the second trip after encountering the royals, Yunjin had brought a pet beast with him. No one knew where he got it from, but it was specifically used to deal with the surveillance from the sky. After quickly cleaning up the battlefield, Zichen looked at the mountains in front of him with hesitation. Butterball approached and asked, Should we go deeper? Before Zichen could answer, Shanya said, We've gained a lot today. Let's go back. Zichen nodded. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but every time he gazed into the depths, he always felt a sense of danger. It was as if there was a powerful and terrifying fierce beast hiding there, waiting for him to go over and then devour him in one gulp. He turned around, planning to leave. But as soon as he turned around, he saw someone standing in the sky. It was a woman, hidden in the clouds. He could vaguely see her graceful figure. Zichen couldn't see the woman's face, but he could feel that she was looking at him. Their eyes met. Seeing Zichen suddenly stop, the few of them were stunned. Shanya asked, What's wrong? Zichen didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the sky and asked, Who are you? The other four were instantly on guard, even though they didn't notice anything unusual. The woman in the clouds seemed to have a fluctuation in her eyes. The next moment, she dissipated. The other party's body disappeared like clouds and mist. It was also like an illusory mirage. What's wrong? There was nothing unusual around them. Lan Guming looked at Zichen in surprise. Zichen pointed to the sky and said, There was someone standing there just now? Heavenly soul? In this battlefield, Earth souls were suppressed by the rules and couldn't fly at all. As for heavenly souls, they could temporarily fly, but it wouldn't last for long. I don't know. He doesn't look old. Zichen glanced at the two girls. They seem to be similar to you, but I couldn't see their faces clearly. They disappeared very quickly. The situation was so strange that Zichen had an extremely bad feeling in his heart. He decided to go back as soon as possible. Recently, the canyon seemed to be getting more and more chaotic. The number of soul-devouring clan members was constantly increasing, and the casualties were also increasing. On the way back, Zichen saw Wan He. After greeting him, the five of them returned to Bloody War City. Zichen. Suddenly, an excited voice rang out. Zichen turned around and saw Yao Yi. The other party's exhaustion was swept away as he looked at him excitedly and said, I've received the recognition of the Gate of the Sky. What about you? Zichen's eyes flashed with surprise. There was no pattern to the opening of the Sky Gate. It might open one day, or it might never open. Zichen's group of 5 had entered the battlefield many times, but they had never opened it before. This included Lan Guming and Shanya, who had entered the battlefield earlier. Then congratulations. Zichen smiled faintly and said sincerely, There's a competition between us, Yao Yi said. I'll wait for you for 7 more days. If you still can't open the Gate of the Sky, then you're not as good as me. Up to you. Zichen walked forward. There are only 7 days left. Don't you need to hurry? Yao Yi asked as he looked at Zichen, who was about to leave the city. There's no hurry. Zichen was very curious about the Gate of the Sky, but it was only curiosity. This was because he didn't lack cultivation techniques, cultivation resources, and soul weapons. Of course, the reason why he was so calm was because Zichen knew that the Gate of the Sky was divided into different levels. The Gate of the Sky opened by the Earth Soul stage and the Gate of the Sky opened by the Heavenly Soul stage were completely different. According to Zichen's estimation, what he wanted might not be in the Gate of the Sky of this level. In front of an abyss, an old man stood. The old man stared at the abyss in front of him with a deep gaze. A woman in green appeared from behind and walked towards the old man. The old man stared at the abyss and said without turning his head, "You went to see him?" The woman in green stood beside the old man and nodded lightly. "I went to take a look, but he also noticed me." "Why is that?" The old man said, "Maybe it's a coincidence." The woman looked at the old man in disbelief. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? "Master, do you really believe that he can succeed?" the woman asked. The old man retracted his gaze from the abyss and looked at the woman in green. "Maybe." The old man wasn't sure. The woman didn't understand. "If that's the case, why do you insist on choosing him? If you let little Sean go with me, won't the chances of success be higher?" "When I first saw him, I felt a bit of affinity with him," the old man said. "Maybe it's best for the two of you to go in." The woman in green found that she couldn't see through her master anymore. Or rather, her master had a strong obsession with this matter. "Since you've already decided on him, why don't you just tell him the truth? Why do you want him to continue without knowing anything?" The woman in green hesitated for a moment and said, "And this time, he seems to be in danger." The old man looked up at the sky and said, "Then let's leave it to fate. If he can't rely on his own strength to reach here, then forget it. There's still a small chance of success." The woman in green stared at the abyss in front of her and muttered, "No matter who goes in, I hope he can succeed." The old man was silent. For a long time, he didn't say anything. There was no free time. After returning, Zichun cultivated and worked hard to strengthen himself. During this period of time, he had made great progress. His combat strength was several times stronger than when he first broke through. 3 days later, Zichun stretched and walked out of his room. He didn't have many Death Soul Stones left. It was time to enter the canyon battlefield again. Zichun went to call Butterball and Yunjian, who lived next door. Next, the three of them would look for Shanya and Long Gu Ming and enter the canyon together. Suddenly, a piercing sound came from the city wall. It was an urgent summons, as if something big was about to happen. Under this summons, everyone had to rush to the city wall. The three of them looked at each other and immediately rushed to the city wall. When they reached the city wall, there were already many earth souls gathered there. There were even a few heavenly souls. Zichun saw Yao Yi in the crowd. Among these people, he seemed to be more familiar with Yao Yi, so he went up to ask about the situation. "There's news from the front. The soul devourers seem to have all moved out. They've rushed into the one-line sky and surrounded many of our teams," said Yao Yi. "Many teams?" Zichun was stunned. He looked around but didn't see Wan He in the crowd. Chapter 3990. Zichun had always admired Wan He as if he was a hero. When they were in the most danger, Wan He appeared with Golden Saber and saved them with just 3 sabers. Wan He kept using saber intent to help the 3 of them along the way. Long Gu Ming and Shanya were able to break through quickly. Besides their own potential, Wan He's saber intent also played a role. Although they were in the same realm, Zichun still admired Wan He. If something happened to Wan He this time, Zichun did not dare to think about the consequences. He could only hope for the best, and that Wan He would be fine. At this moment, someone ran over from the other side of the city wall. It was Xingui. He came to Yao Yi and said, "We have accurate information about 2 teams. Du Yi, the 9th of the 10 heroes, is inside." Zichun looked at Xingui and asked, "What about the second team?" Xingui hesitated. Zichun's expression changed. He urged, "Tell me, who's in the second team?" Yao Yi said unhappily, "Don't dawdle. Tell me." "It's Captain Golden Saber," Xingui said. Zichun heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it wasn't Wan He, but the next moment, his expression changed. Wasn't Wan He's title Golden Saber? "It's Golden Saber Wan He?" Zichun's voice changed. Xingui nodded. Zichun's expression immediately turned ugly. "Zichun." Shan Ya's voice came from behind. She and Long Gu Ming had arrived in time. She asked, "What happened?" Zichun said, "The soul devourers have all moved out. Wan He is surrounded." The 2 girls' faces immediately turned pale. Xingui shook his head and sighed. "It's said that many teams are surrounded, but only Do E and Captain Golden Saber have sent out distress signals. When he sent out a distress signal, Long Guming's expression changed again. Then she looked at Zichun. After entering the canyon, in addition to life and death battles, everyone was equipped with a distress signal. When danger occurred, they could call for help from the nearest ally. Yao Yi clenched his teeth and said, "That damned soul-devouring clan. How dare they disregard the rules and mobilize their entire army?" Shanya was also looking at Zichun. Butterball and Yunjun were the same. Zichun took a deep breath before he turned around and glanced at Fatty and Yunjun. "You two stay here and wait for orders." After saying that, he glanced at Shanya and Lan Guming. The two girls looked very determined. Zichun said, "Let's go." The two girls immediately followed. Yao Yi was slightly taken aback. Shin Gui's expression changed. The three of them swaggered off. "Wait." Butterball's voice rang out, "You can't leave us behind. This has nothing to do with you." Zichun said without looking back, "One, he is our friend. We have to save him. You guys continue to stay here and wait for us to come back." "Bull Shastra's T, he's our comrade," Yunjin said in dissatisfaction. "Moreover, we're a team. If the two of us are missing, the three of you will be reduced by at least half. At that time, you won't be saving him, you'll be sending yourself to death." Butterball. Coming. Butterball followed. Behind him, a voice rumbled, and a murderous aura swept over. It was Fatty who had caught up in time. Zichun glanced at the two of them. The two of them came forward and stood behind Zichun. "We're a team. We can't lose anyone," Yunjun said in a low voice. "Even if we die, we'll die together." At this moment, the surroundings were filled with righteous indignation. Many Earth souls were furious. "Where are you guys going?" A heavenly soul came forward and looked at Zichun. "Saving people." Zichun's answer was very simple. The heavenly soul said, "We can save people, but you have to listen to the arrangements. We're discussing this matter." However, before the heavenly soul could finish speaking, Zichun's figure entered the passage. "By the time you're done with your discussion, it'll be too late." Lan Guming, Shanya, Butterball, and Yunjin also rushed in. In front of everyone's eyes, 5 streaks of smoke and dust rolled into the depths of the canyon. This scene seemed to have ignited the courage of all the Earth souls. One after another, they jumped into the passage. "Nonsense, isn't this nonsense?" The heavenly soul stood on the city wall, flustered and exasperated. "At this moment, if we wait for you to plan everything, it'll be too late." Yao Yi glanced at his grandfather and said, "This kind of thing can only be solved with strength." He jumped in. The others followed suit. On the city wall, rays of light lit up one after another, and one Earth soul after another entered. The situation was somewhat out of control. Even the heavenly souls seemed to be unable to suppress it. At this moment, a blue light appeared. It was the mysterious old man who had appeared previously. He looked at the smoke and dust in the canyon and said, "All Earth souls, listen up. Quickly enter the canyon and fight." Clearly, many Earth souls did not recognize this blue-robed old man. However, after he finished speaking, rays of light lit up around them. All the passages into the canyon had been opened. The heavenly souls did not stop him. The blue-robed old man continued, "All heavenly souls, gather and follow me into the canyon. This might be a decisive battle." In Bloody Battle City, when the heavenly souls heard this, their expressions could not help but change. A decisive battle was about to begin like this? Why was there no warning at all? Was this not too hasty? However, in the next moment, the old man had already jumped in, taking the lead. "Prepare to fight to the death." The blue-robed old man had already left, but his voice still echoed in the sky above Bloody Battle City. The other heavenly souls did not hesitate and entered the canyon one after another. A decisive battle. Spiritual Master Tianju sighed and then leaped into the canyon. The old man who had been guarding the gate stood up for the first time. His gaze became sharp, like an unsheathed sword. "Yunjun, you must not die. From now on, the task of guarding this place will be handed over to you. You are more suitable to guard the gate than I am." The old man disappeared, and in the next moment, he was in the canyon. At the same time, in another direction, a plump old man appeared. After exchanging glances with the old man guarding the gate, he charged into the canyon. He was Butterball's master, a guardian of Bloody Battle City. Butterball was the successor he had painstakingly found and nurtured. On this day, all the Earth Souls and Heavenly Souls in Bloody Battle City were mobilized and entered the one-line sky. A great battle suddenly broke out, without warning. In this decisive battle, the one who charged at the forefront was a small team of 5. The leader was Zichun. Chapter 3991. Within the black clouds, there was a strange, devouring power that seemed to want to devour everyone's soul power. There was a flash of light in front of Zichun. It was a holy talisman that spread out in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. The holy talisman exploded, and countless lightning bolts scattered in all directions, crushing all the black clouds and sending the nearby soul-devouring clan flying. Let's go. Zichun did not look at the soul-devouring clan blocking the way. Like a sharp sword, he tore a hole in the endless darkness. He led the team and rushed into the depths. One-line sky. He had arrived. Behind Zichun, the other soul hunters arrived in small teams. Like a torrent of light, they rushed into the darkness and tore it apart. A great battle broke out. Yu Gue! Zichun shouted. Yu Gue jumped onto Zichun's shoulder and began to sense Wanhe's location. It naturally knew Wanhe's aura, but this time, it seemed to be disturbed by an inexplicable energy. Yu Gue could not sense Wanhe's location immediately. Zichun had no choice but to keep charging forward. His eyes were firm and his steps were swift. Only by constantly moving forward and going deeper could he possibly know Wanhe's location. Around him, holy talismans poured out as if they were free. They shone brilliantly and roared in all directions. There was no need for them to make a move. Countless holy talismans opened up a straight path for everyone. The reason why they used holy talismans was to accumulate power. This was also the first time that Butterball and Yunjin saw Zichun's holy talismans. They were extremely shocked. After moving forward for about 10 miles, Yu Gue finally sensed Wanhe's aura. It pointed in a direction and made a strange sound. Let's go, Zichun shouted. A holy talisman brush appeared in his hand, and he drew a talisman in the air. The soul power between heaven and earth began to flow rapidly. A Yu Gue tiger with wings appeared. It was like a mountain peak. Its tall body landed in the countless black clouds. The next moment, the tiger's roar shook the sky and tore through the darkness, opening up a path for Zichun. The 5 of them followed behind Yohu and headed into the depths until they arrived at the one-line sky. During this time, no life-and-death battles broke out. None of the soul-devouring clan members that Yohu had sent flying had any intention of stopping them. They allowed them to go deeper. It didn't take long before Zichun arrived at the place he didn't dare to set foot in before. This time, he didn't hesitate and rushed in directly. Within the countless black clouds in the sky, a heavenly soul could not help but smile cruelly when he saw the scene below. Today is the day you die. As he prepared to attack, the aura of a heavenly soul began to circulate. At this moment, a beam of light appeared in the sky, blocking the other party's path. You want to fight? I'll accompany you. A heavenly soul from the Soul Hunting clan charged towards the heavenly soul from the Soul Gobbling clan. Below, before Zichun could find Wanhe, the battle between the heavenly souls in the sky had already erupted. Amidst the rolling black clouds, a giant beast suddenly appeared in front of the dim Yohu. It slapped down with its claw, and a tyrannical power surged. With a loud bang, Yohu, who had exhausted a lot of his energy, exploded. The giant beast opened its mouth and inhaled. The energy from Yohu's exploding body was swallowed into its stomach. This was a soul-devouring beast that had appeared after using a spell. It blocked the path of Zichun and the others. This was also the first powerful obstacle that they had encountered along the way. Obviously, this person was not weak. A powerful aura surged in the surroundings as the soul-devouring beast charged forward. A long staff appeared in Zichun's hand. As he poured power into it, the patterns on it lit up one after another. Until now, Zichun had not completely activated the patterns on the staff. golden light illuminated the surroundings, and the waves formed dispersed the black fog nearby. Boom! The ground shook, and several cracks appeared. Zichun stepped on the ground, and his body shot towards the soul-devouring beast like an arrow. Like a golden arrow, he landed on the soul-devouring beast's body, and countless golden lights exploded. The golden light pierced through the soul-devouring beast's body and fell into the distance. The soul-devouring beast's body collapsed with a loud bang. Behind it, an Earth Soul Realm warrior from the soul-devouring clan suddenly turned pale. The next moment, he spat out blood. My lord! The few people standing beside him were shocked. Oh no! The soul-devouring clan warrior who had spat out blood suddenly changed his expression. He cried out, "Retreat! Retreat quickly! You think you can leave?" A mocking voice suddenly came from the front. The black fog in front of them began to roll violently. A golden light broke through the fog and arrived in front of the leader. Countless golden lights bloomed, and the surrounding darkness was completely dispelled. A shadow of a staff descended from the sky and landed on the leader of the soul-devouring clan. The leader sensed that something was wrong. He took a few steps back and shouted loudly. A black protective light appeared in front of him. The moment the light appeared, several patterns lit up on it. This was the protection of the soul-devouring clan, and it made the leader feel slightly relieved. At this moment, the shadow of the staff landed with a loud bang. The black protective light collapsed directly, and the shadow of the staff did not weaken as it landed on the leader's body. A clear crack extended for dozens of feet, and clouds of dust rose from it. When the other retreating members of the soul-devouring clan saw this, there was a hint of fear in their eyes. To be able to kill their lord with one strike, this combat power was too terrifying. They retreated even faster. A blue light suddenly flew out from the black fog. Like a blue lightning bolt, it landed on a member of the soul-devouring clan. The retreating body stopped and fell to the ground. He had lost his life. In another direction, the soul weapon formed by the miracle stone flew towards another member of the soul-devouring clan. It instantly destroyed the other party's protection and pierced through it. Butterball and Yunjun followed closely behind. After breaking through the black fog, they charged towards the enemies. With the soul-devouring clan blocking their way, they could no longer conserve their strength. They could only fight their way forward. Zichun swung the staff in his hand. A golden light streaked across the sky, and a frightened member of the soul-devouring clan was sent flying. Yugue turned into a stream of light and came close to the other party. He opened his mouth, like a black hole opening, and swallowed the other party. Zichun put away the staff and continued forward. Butterball cleaned up the battlefield as fast as he could, and then followed closely behind. Zichun was at the front, opening a path with the staff. This time, he was not simply repelling the enemies, but killing them. He kept killing until there were no more enemies in front of him. It was the first time Yunjun felt such a strong killing intent from Zichun. At the same time, he mourned for the members of the soul-devouring clan who were blocking their way. Because Zichun, who had used all his strength, was not someone they could resist. In fact, Yunjun had never understood why Zichun did not enter the 10 heroes with his combat power. This should not be the case. As for why Shanya and Longu Meng did not enter the 10 heroes, he could vaguely guess the reason. However, Zichun did not enter the 10 heroes as well. This was obviously not normal. Could it be that those heavenly souls were hiding something? Boom, boom, boom. Powerful energy kept shaking. Zichun, who was moving forward, was eliminating the strongest enemies along the way. After eliminating 4 groups of leaders who blocked their way, they finally arrived at the place where Wanhee was trapped. Chapter 3992. Wanhee half knelt on the ground. There were dozens of wounds on his body, blood dripping from them. Beside him were 2 corpses. 2 others were heavily injured and had lost their ability to fight. The golden saber was stabbed into the ground beside him. Its luster had dimmed significantly. Around him were more than 20 soul-devouring clan corpses. They were all incomplete. In the distance, there were dozens of soul-devouring clan experts. They held soul weapons and looked at Wanhee in fear. Wanhee's killing power was too terrifying. Even though they were used to seeing death, they were still terrified. The golden light illuminated the area. Zichen rushed in and landed on the ground. The soul-devouring clan members who were extremely cautious because of Wan He's strength were all shocked. They retreated subconsciously. Zichen held the staff and immediately rushed forward. "How are you?" He knew who it was from the voice. Wan He said without turning his head. "Why are you here?" Zichen said, "We heard your call for help and immediately rushed over." At this time, the black fog that had healed was torn apart by a strange force again. Lan Guming and the others arrived. "We didn't call for help," Wan He said in a low voice. "What?" Zichen's expression changed. Shanya and Lan Guming had already arrived. They shielded the injured Wan He behind them. Butterball and Yunjun went to check on the others. 2 of them were confirmed dead. The other 2 were heavily injured. The 2 immediately took out their pills and began treating them. Wan He said, "We didn't call for help. You shouldn't have come." After gathering some strength, Wan He stood up. He looked ahead and said, "We've been surrounded for quite some time. They deliberately surrounded us but didn't kill us. That's why we managed to hold on until now. I suspect they have other motives. That's why we didn't call for help." Behind Wan He, an injured Earth Soul Realm expert said weakly, "We originally planned to call for help, but the leader saw that they seemed to have other motives. So, we gave up. We planned to fight them to the death here." They didn't call for help, but Shen Gue clearly said that Wan He and Du Yi's team had sent out a call for help. Did Du Yi see them? So when you asked for help, you said that as well? Zichen's heart skipped a beat as he made this guess. However, Zichen quickly dispelled this idea. If Du Yi saw Wan He, he would definitely think of a way to meet up with Wan He in this kind of crisis, instead of fighting separately after calling for help. "This is a trap. You shouldn't have come," Wan He said again. Zichen's expression changed, but he didn't turn around to look at Lan Guming. If this was a trap, then the target might be the divine soul goddess Lan Guming. However, Lan Guming's identity was only known to a few heavenly souls. Even earthly souls were not aware of it. So how did the soul-devouring clan find out? Someone in the heavenly soul realm had exposed Lan Guming's identity? A burst of laughter suddenly rang out as a person walked out from the black fog. "Wan He, you're very smart. You've guessed our thoughts, but so what? Didn't you all fall for it?" Seeing the person in front of him, Zichen was a little surprised. "It's you." It was the person from the royal family who had been rescued by the heavenly soul realm from the soul-devouring clan. He didn't expect him to come this time. "Zichen, today is the day you die," Mo Lin said coldly. "I, Mo Lin, will kill you with my own hands," Zichen said without batting an eyelid. "You've put on such a big show just to deal with me? Is this a big show?" Mo Lin smiled disdainfully and said, "This is just a training for our soul-devouring clan. Of course, we'll kill you along the way." Zichen glanced at Wan He, and Wan He also glanced at Zichen. All words were spoken in silence. The 2 of them had reached a tacit understanding when they looked at each other. Zichen looked around and said, "You probably don't have the guts to scheme against me. Get your people to come out. I'll kill every one of them I see today." Mo Lin sneered and said, "With just you?" Zichen's figure suddenly dissipated, disappearing like a cloud. "You're courting death." The smile on Mo Lin's face disappeared, and a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He struck out with his palm, and a strong soul-devouring power surged out. A soul-devouring beast's head appeared out of thin air and swallowed forward. Zichen's figure appeared, and he was right where the soul-devouring beast's head was. "You're still so weak." Zichen smiled coldly and punched out. Lightning shot out from his fist and instantly shattered the beast's head. Mo Lin's figure had already retreated a few feet. His eyes were extremely cold, and his hands were quickly forming seals. Waves of soul-devouring power gathered around him, and a violent aura emerged. This aura made Zichen feel danger. He didn't dare to be careless. The black rod in his hand appeared again, and his power gathered. Golden light began to swirl around it. Demon King technique. As the seals fell, Mo Lin's aura had changed greatly. He was like a demon king from another world, and he launched a killing move at Zichen. The black fog in the sky began to roll violently, and a huge palm print fell from the sky, carrying a terrifying aura. The pressure around him instantly increased, and Zichen's movements were affected to a certain extent. He narrowed his eyes. Compared to last time, Emolin's power was much stronger this time. However, in the next moment, an even more powerful aura surged around him. His figure soared into the sky, and his rod swept toward the palm print. In the sky, the two types of energy collided violently, and the terrifying giant hand was torn apart by the long rod. Then, a golden staff shadow flashed in the sky and came down. Emolin disappeared from where he had been standing. A deep crack extended into the distance where he had been standing, all the way to his feet. Sensing the energy surging in the crack, Emolin's lips curled into a mocking smile. It seemed that as long as he didn't let his opponent close the distance, Zichen's combat power was nothing special. He thought that he had found Zichen's weakness, and he began to use the powerful techniques of the soul-devouring clan from afar. His techniques couldn't destroy Zichen, but at the same time, Zichen couldn't threaten him. The two of them were evenly matched. Emolin sneered and said, "It seems that you're only a..." Behind him, Wanhee saw this scene, and his eyes flashed slightly. He said in a deep voice, "Attack, kill everyone." After saying this, Wanhee's eyes had a solemn and stirring look because he had already made up his mind. Shanya and Lan Gumeng were still unaware, and they charged toward the other members of the soul-devouring clan. "Time for you to die." At the same time, Zichen's eyes became extremely cold. The long rod in his hand, which had turned golden, began to tremble violently, and a violent aura surged out. He swung his rod down. An arc-shaped rod shadow appeared in the sky. With a loud bang, Emolin's body flew backward.